Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission to discuss budgets. This is actually a special meeting and not a workshop. We will have some actual decisions to make today. Happy Flag Day. It's June 14th. We have lots of business to get to, so I will ask Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
All right, we have motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All righty, we have an agenda. Madam Clerk.
Our business discussion item for today is item number 2023-578, FY 2024 proposed general government budget, with a recommendation that the City Commission hear budget presentations from staff and provide direction.
Madam Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Members of the Commission, this is our fourth meeting. As you stated, this is not a workshop, it's actually a special meeting. So we will continue in this meeting, though, with the budget presentations from our internal support agencies like communications, finance, budget, risk, et cetera, fleet management. And with that, I will ask the Acting Director of OMB, Mr. Varvel, to start with the presentations. And at the close of it, I will lead on the last three slides, which summarizes where we are today.
Very good, thank you. But before you start, Mr. Marvell, I will tell everyone that I'll ask the clerk. I believe Commissioner Willits is joining us via Zoom. Is that accurate?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Hi, Commissioner. I'm assuming he's on there. There he is. Okay.
Howdy, howdy.
All righty, Mr. Marvell.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, Steve Arvell, Acting Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and here we are on, I believe, our fourth meeting related to the FY24 proposed financial and operating plan. Today we're going to talk about the support and administrative services areas of the organization. In order, we'll do communication and marketing, financial services, human resources, technology, Office of Management and Budget, which does include risk management, and then we'll do the transportation, which is the fleet portion of it, the non-general fund portion of it. And then, as the city manager mentioned, she will wrap it up after non-departmental with the summary of where we are and where we're going. Just as a reminder that tomorrow we will be setting the preliminary fire assessment at the City Commission meeting. In July 20th, we are going to come back and we will adopt the maximum tentative millage rate, which is a statutory requirement and procedure. We will have a final, hopefully, budget workshop on August 21st. We're going to wrap up all of the enterprise activities of the organization, the capital, and then show you how we got to the zero on the budget. Okay, okie doke. So let's get going. And then in September we go to the formal adoption of the first reading and second reading of the budget and millage rates. All right, I'm going to introduce Jennifer Smart. She is Communications Director, and she will go through her slide.
Welcome, Ms. Smart.
Mayor, Commissioners, Jennifer Smart, Communications Director. I am joined today by our Broadcast Manager, Raul Merlot, and our Creative Services Manager, Laura Rawson. We want to thank you, of course, for all of the support that you give our Communications Department, and we want to share with you some of what we have done with funding received in the past year. As you know, we handle the city's media relations, broadcast services, education and outreach, crisis communication, website and social media management, and ceremonial events and celebrations. Our top accomplishments in the past year have included the redesign and launch of the updated city website, the launch of 2 new streaming channels for viewing city video content, expanding our bilingual digital presence through signage, safety publications and translations, that is citywide, and event coordination for the swearing-in ceremony, State of the City, Indigenous Peoples Day, Rosa Parks celebration, and others. So breaking this down further, we can take a look at our two divisions. We are generally broken down into broadcast engineering and communications and marketing, but communications and marketing essentially is the stand-in terminology for everything else. That also encapsulates our events and our public information office. Among other work, our broadcast team has provided the city with the airing of 355 hours of live meetings, more than 1,500 hours of content on Channel 12, 74 produced videos, and they also provide the engineering and support assistance for Channel 12. Our communications and marketing group is responsible for 233 e-newsletters and email updates. This is both external in the form of GNV News and internal in the form of Inside GNV. They have had more than 1.8 million unique page views on the city website that they handle for you, and a social media reach last year of more than 1.2 million. Meanwhile, our public information office has composed 53 news releases and answered more than 500 media requests on behalf of all city departments. We've also handled hundreds of pieces of print and digital collateral. This includes signage, flyers, posters, brochures, booklets. Our office frequently provides document translations, and we have logged more than 250 hours in that service. We also serve as the information provider for hurricane season, routine daily service announcements, changes in service, and many of the neighborhood relations. So when it comes to our decrements, we are fortunate that the only proposed decrements for our department that are in the personnel area involve vacant positions. We have eliminated an unfilled part-time digital media producer and also an unfilled senior writer position. Our proposed operating decrements are displayed here. In part, they actually consist of more than these, but these are the largest of the proposed decrements. The biggest one is the elimination of closed captions for advisory boards and other meetings. This would save us $37,000. The result of that, however, would be that the only meetings we do have funds to caption are city commission meetings and general policy committee. Because of this, and due to our understanding of ADA accessibility standards, this also means that we likely would not be able to make public videos of other meetings for which we do not provide captioning. That means that those meetings would receive technical support from broadcast, but they would not be made public in video form. They would also need to rely on standard minute taking for any kind of record keeping. We also have a reduction in the funding for telephone town halls. We will not have the budget under this proposal to provide this service for commissioners, but we will still have funding for emergency town halls. This would be in the event, most likely, of hurricane messaging. And our final significant reduction is the elimination of the longest table immigrant fare funding, which will save us $9,000. We are also cutting sponsorships and our marketing and advertising budget. We are eliminating our media monitoring software, and we are also eliminating the order of swag and other city-branded items. That is the end of our presentation, and we are open for any questions.
I don't see any lights. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Smart.
So I'm actually going to answer a frequently asked question, if I can go back one slide. When you see the personnel service decrement, you see a number that's larger than the net. Understand that the net includes FY24 wage and benefit changes. So, but that is what you see is the value of the monetary value of the positions eliminated. Okay.
And I'll add one other thing that we see throughout all these presentations, the letters FTE. And I know that for everybody up here, we know, because we deal with it all the time, that means full-time equivalent. That means one full salary. A 1.0 is one full salary for a year. And I will tell you that I know a lot of folks in this room aren't faking knowing what an FTE is, so now you know, you're aware. So congratulations.
That's the second most frequently asked question. What do these acronyms mean? So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that. Yes.
Mr. Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very brief comment. So the metrics are really helpful that the director has on here. And I just want to say that the daily news feed that comes out is terrific because it compiles stories that we don't necessarily put out. So I appreciate that very much. Is there some way that someone can essentially subscribe to that news feed that comes out from the city? That would be my question.
Are you referring to the news wrap that we are sending internally?
Yes, ma'am.
That is just an internal service for commissioners and other senior leadership. We do not have any external facing version
All
of
right.
that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the metrics. That's all, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Okay, our next internal support department will be financial services. Ms. Wong will take the controls now.
Great. Welcome, Ms. Wong.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Sue Wang, Finance Director. Well, since I'm a finance person, let's just go to the numbers directly. Budget by fund. So for 24, our total budget is $4.2 million. It's up from almost $4 million from 2023. 3.8 sits in general fund. 105,000 sits in RTS, and 308,000 in pension funds. So FTE or full-time equivalents, 41.9 supports general fund. We have one person who supports RTS, and 2.6, I think that is, 2.6 people support the pension trust funds. In terms of the total expenditure, financial services is about 2.6% of the total general fund expenditures. As to the accomplishments for 2022, I'm not going to dive into the first two. I think we are all well aware that in 1 year we completed 2 audits. We reduced our audit fundings. I do want to draw your attention to the third point there, which is the collaboration within the department. I strongly believe that the reason we were able to balance our cash was because of the collaboration between accounting and our billing and collection team. So I'm looking forward in the new year, in the months ahead, for accounting and our core, financial operations team to continue the collaboration. This is our divisions and the budget, the headcount, and the services and the performance metrics. I think you can see that, the core financial services functions like accounting, accounts payable, billing and collection, payroll. What's not, it probably strikes you as, like not traditional financial services function is the contract management and purchasing. And also, I want to draw your attention to internal controls. I do believe there is efficiency to be gained from our contract team and our purchasing team. So I'm looking forward to working with all the departments, the directors and the managers on contract management and also purchasing, just to identify, the cost savings opportunities there. Internal controls, with the many audit findings that we've been having, we definitely we're going to pay more attention to internal controls. It's not just for internal controls for financial services, but also for all departments. I am looking forward to working with the departments on, just strengthening the internal controls, starting with process documentation, just also, identify gaps and close those gaps. For financial services administration, we manage our cash, investment, debt management. We manage our pension assets and also grants. We have a new grants fiscal coordinator coming on board actually next Tuesday. So I'm looking forward to having him work on our grants policy, procedures, and also in terms of the FEMA reimbursement. This is the breakdown of our total budget. You can see for the most part is in salaries and benefits. For personnel, we did move one person, she is our purchasing specialist. We moved her out of the general fund into the RTS fund. For the decrement, we had 200,000. That was in our 2023 budget, which was set aside to help our accounting team for their build up and stabilization effort. I feel that now we got 2 audits done. We got caught up, that we are in a good place, so we can give up this 200,000. I don't have much to say about this slide. I believe this is it.
Okay. All right, any questions for Ms. Wong? Anybody? Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thank
Wong.
you.
Okay, and the next internal service support department is Human Resources, and Laura Grates is here to talk about their efforts and their budget.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Laura Gretz, Human Resources Director. I'm pleased to be here today with you to share the budgetary decisions we've made for fiscal year 24 and talk a little bit about the accomplishments of HR during this past year. So you'll see on the slide above, Human Resources for this fiscal year is a department of 27 employees that support around 2,300 employees across the entire organization, including all charters. As that, we serve as a trusted business partner to attract, hire, develop, and retain the talent that's needed to help serve our community's needs. As part of our work for 2022, we processed just over 11,000 job applications. We hired just under 500 new employees for both general government and GRU. We facilitated just shy of 12,000 training hours, again, for both general government and GRU, and managed around just over 200 employee and labor and employee relations matters. We also were pleased to report that we helped to manage the fiscal year 22 performance evaluation process to a point where all were completed by the organization. There were none that were left undone. It was a big lift by our team, and I appreciate their efforts. As you can see in the pie charts provided for fiscal year 24, our budget is just over $2 million. That's down from just over $3 million for fiscal year 23. All 23 of our employees are funded through the general fund, and it represents about 1.5% of the general fund. This next slide breaks down our various divisions within Human Resources, the budget that's allotted for each division, and the FTE count, full-time equivalents. I will just sort of summarize this slide. In anticipation of what was needed for fiscal year 24, I made a decision to merge the Learning and Organizational Development Division with Talent Acquisition to create a Talent Management Division. It allowed us to find some efficiencies and some vacant positions that we could eliminate, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But it also allows us to provide a more holistic approach to talent management for the organization from the time that we attract and hire an employee all the way through their development and to hopefully their retire with the organization. So just wanted to explain how the approach with that. So the next slide, you'll see a breakdown of our salaries and benefits, our operating expenses, and our program dollars that are budgeted, and a breakout of each. So as I mentioned, as part of the merge of the two divisions, it allowed us to eliminate some vacant positions that we had, and it ranged. It included a talent acquisition manager, 2 professionals in the compensation analyst and talent acquisition representative, and then a human resources technician. To do that merger, I will just add that we provided an opportunity for our internal staff to apply for vacant positions that were in our class and comp division where we are lacking employees and have some vacancies. And they were able to take on those roles. So not only is the department able to provide a greater level of service to the organization, but we've got individual employees who are increasing their skill set and their marketability going forward with us. Then you'll see under the operating decrements, the total value of that was just over $100,000. It represented a small reduction to operations and maintenance expenses, and then reduction to administrative and general expenses. Those cuts represented things like we have a shredding service that comes, so we're decreasing the frequency in which the shredding company comes, and there's a savings that's associated with that. We also looked to eliminate spending on some of our outsourced training products. It will require that we'll have to produce more in-house, but thankfully we have a very talented and skilled team on board that can help us with that. So we looked for efficiencies in that way. The final decrement that you'll see is around the Public Service Academy program. It was a pilot that we attempted to launch this year, and we ran into a few hiccups with that. So there was $500,000 that was allotted to that program. We worked jointly with GRU, with GPD and GFR, along with partners at Santa Fe College and CareerSource to create a program where it would help generate interest in the work in the public service field and help create an entry-level pipeline of employees for us. It is a great concept. Unfortunately, as we marketed and promoted the program, a lot of the folks who expressed interest ended up falling off and not returning phone calls and not following through in order to get them through the whole process. And then the ones that were responsive, the funding mechanism that was set up and offered through CareerSource didn't apply to those individuals. CareerSource was great in providing an alternative funding solution. However, it would have cost the city more money to match those funds. So given the budget situation that we're in, a decision was made to put a pause on that pilot program for now. And I'd like to recommend that we take some time over fiscal year 24 to retool that. Now, in the meantime, that doesn't mean that a pipeline goes away. There are still pipelines that exist for those jobs. So GFR does have a non-certified firefighter program that they have done an outstanding job administering, and they're doing it. It's doing tremendous work in recruiting local talent for those positions. Similarly, GPD has a cadet program, and GRU has an apprentice program and progression through training programs that allows us to bring folks in at more that entry-level point and then develop them upwards. So I say it's not going away. I definitely think that we need to bring it back, but we need to do a bit more retooling with it at this time. And there's one more slide, but it just shows a further breakdown of the budget and positions by division. So just overall, as I mentioned in the beginning, our fiscal year 23 budget was just over $3 million with 27 FTEs. The proposed budget for fiscal year 24 is about $2.3 million at 23 FTEs, an overall reduction of about 23.7%. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Anyone questions for HR? Once again, entirely clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, did you mention that we are actually going to repurpose some of that academy money? So the Chief Dixon, as she said, they've worked very hard to try and source local talent in the non-certified. They have identified, I think it's 10 total, Ms. Curry, was it? Locally sourced individuals, and they're going to put them through fire college, and we're going to use that and use those funds. It's consistent with the purpose, so we thought it would be a good way to allow the fire department to start to address some of their staffing needs and address it at the local level. So they are being used for a good purpose this year. All right, technology. I'm going to do my best on this. It's Mr. Duda is here, and he really is the person who leads. This is largely our Workday team. They will do the stabilization. They will work on the relaunch. There is very little change, actually no change in the staffing. What you see, the change are largely related to vacancies and adjustments based on our personal service amounts. They still have a heavy lift ahead of them, so bless them for doing that. It only is about 1.3% of the general fund's budget. So like I said, this is the Workday service team. They have put together user groups, steering committees, and they work with the users to identify areas of need. Is a nice way. Is how I'm going to put it. But then they work towards solutions, not just, oh, it's nice to hear that. They actually work towards solutions on an internal basis. The program is the Workday subscription fees, largely, and and Office 365 upgrades. There are no personal service decrements. There are some software decrements, and they are eliminating their temporary services as they staff up. So, Mr. Duda can answer any technical questions that you all may have.
Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just trying to be efficient with the comments as we go through the various divisions. On the financial services side, I was glad to hear Ms. Wong, Madam Manager, talk about contract efficiencies. One of our bargaining units provided some feedback that came from employees who can basically determine and ascertain some of the things we should be looking at, and that was one of the specific mentions, was one of the bargaining units specifically mentioning feedback. Look at your contracts and vendors, so I appreciate that. And I think that's good because it shows that information is filtering up through the management to make some of these recommendations. And then on the human resources side and the vacancies, you've got, I think for the director, at least one middle manager vacancy that's been eliminated. And I think that's good because we've talked about some of the areas where we're eliminating positions. And these are meaningful positions that have significant responsibilities. So as a thought as we go through the divisions this means that we're making some rather substantial changes to the budget. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Book. Mr. Marvell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a summary of where the cuts come from by cost center, that's all. All right, Office of Management and Budget. I don't have to call somebody else up. The Office of Management and Budget develops, and monitors the financial and operating plan for the city of Gainesville. We are the lead on development and monitoring of the organizational strategic plan, and we're really going to be focusing on finding how we're going to do that with less resources in the next year. They did accomplish a lot this year. The management consulting's portion of the division worked with everybody involved in the special event permitting process, and they have launched a new special events permitting program and process to actually create efficiencies and get it through the process much quicker. They've integrated code enforcement workflow into my GNV so that you can get real-time statistics and metrics on the code enforcement process. And of course, we did complete and adopt the general government financial and operating plan and met all state deadlines in reporting. The budget is about $800,000 lower for fiscal year '24, and it represents less than 1% of the general fund. As I said, the budget operating center, they do all the planning, development, and monitoring of the financial and operating plan. Beginning with the third quarter, we will go back to providing quarterly budget to actual monitoring reports to the commission. And the management consulting group, their sole purpose is to go out, work with our partners in the organization, and find ways to improve processes, monitor the output of their efforts, so their job is to make us better where we can as an organization. So, and the program is the fire assessment. That's for the contract, and then there's payment to the tax collector for the collection of it. Oops, I forgot to advance. Personal service decrements are the strategic planner, a senior budget analyst, the smart city coordinator, 2 service design positions, the service design program manager and the service experience specialist. These will not come without an impact to our ability to do outreach and special projects. We will have to find a different way to do it, okay? Largely the operating decrements are contractual services and professional services that were connected to those programs that are eliminated. So I'm about to go on to the next one. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Marvell? Okay, go ahead. Yes. Okay, Commissioner Willits.
Thank you. Can you tell us again what the Smart City Coordinator does and when did we add that position to the city?
The position was added in 2017 or 18, Mr. Mayor. They are the single source focal point coordinating smart city efforts across departments. We're not going to stop smart city areas. It will not be a centralized function anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner, yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Marvell, this is on all of the positions that are vacant that have been eliminated. Those positions cannot come back without an active participation coming to the commission to recreate them. I mean, if you're cutting them, they're gone, and you would have to then come back in the budget year to try to recreate those positions. That's what I'm asking.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Chestnut is absolutely correct. When we eliminate an FTE, it takes it off the board, and the only way we can increase those positions within the general fund is with specific commission approval and action.
Okay. Thank you. Well, you said it much better than I. Thank you.
So, yeah, there are things throughout the budget that are single year changes, and then there are things like positions that are recurring decrements. And that's what we're looking at here.
Yeah, and I think it's just good for the public to understand that once they're eliminated,
they're gone.
they're gone.
Right. Okay, I see no other lights on this one.
This is the all funds. There are portions of the Office of Management budget because risk management will be rolled into the Office of Management budget in October. So that director's position will be partially funded through those 2 risk funds. Which brings me to risk management. Risk management is a shared function across all charter officers, so it is much like HR is a good example of a shared service across all charters. This sounds like a little thing, but we really, I find this to be this was Sean Daniels' idea. She's our nurse practitioner. She went and she got DOT certified, so we now do not have to send our biannual and our annual DOT physical recertifications outside to a vendor. It's reduced costs significantly, but more importantly, we have been able to work around RTS's need for drivers and schedule around their needs, not when something is open. So it costs less and it creates significant efficiencies. We also obtain our lowest workers' compensation rating in our history. We have the second lowest, what's called mod factor. It's given to by the State Division of Workers' Compensation. They review every organization in similar industries, and they rate you against your peers. The only city that's lower than us does not have a utility, and it does not have a transit system. So we are unique. We have an average cost that is 60% of our peer group. That is a testament to the way we actively manage a workers' compensation claim, our partnership with the departments to provide limited duty access, but it's a big deal. And the other one is with the wellness in our benefit education program, we've successfully transitioned away from the virtual environment back to the in-person, because we do a lot of wellness is a really tough virtual methodology. So we've been able to go back out to our customers and interact with them. And that's a really big deal because health insurance, quite frankly, is complicated. Not for me, not for Tiffany, our benefits manager, but for the people that go every day. We believe that there's a significant amount of savings that are achieved by learning how to use your health benefit in the most cost-effective manner for you, which ultimately results in a more cost-efficient manner for the employer. This is a large operating budget. It is over $36 million through both funds. I would like to point out the vast majority of that is claims and not administrative. In fact, in our health plan, 7 cents on the dollar goes to administrative, including our external administrator. That's all inclusive. So we load largely benefits into our premiums. Okay, in the general fund, we have a 1/10 of one position, and that individual handles our supplemental retirement and 401, our defined contribution plan. That is a general fund function. Everything else is included in our 2 risk funds. The general insurance fund has employee health and wellness in it. That is our clinic. That is our employee wellness program. We provide both urgent and ongoing health care for our employees. That's where we actively manage a good portion of our comp claims. So a lot of the small minor injuries are handled in-house, and it reduces costs, and it gets people back to work quicker. That is where our certified athletic trainer is located, who is actively involved in injury, both on and off the job, reconditioning and getting them back to work. There's also a significant efficiency by doing that in-house. It's cost, and we can work around the employee schedules. So the risk management administration, that's where that's the largely the administration of everything. Insurance procurement, claims administration, third-party, auto, general employment, all that comes out of there. And then workers' comp and safety, the largest portion of that is the cost of providing workers' compensation. And we do have a very active safety award program. We challenge our customers to help us with the reduction of loss and cost associated with loss. And when they hit their benchmarks, we have a fund that allows them to dip into to do safety-related training, equipment, those type of things that that are difficult to include in budgets nowadays. So it's very successful, and quite frankly, it's really well liked by the departments. The Employee Health and Accident Benefit Fund. This is where we manage our self-insured health plan. Like I said, the vast majority of this cost is associated with claims payments. The Blue Cross Administrator is less than $1 million. Well, it's just over $1 million. And then we buy what's called specific stop loss, which is actually a claims and benefit thing. It is a risk management tool, a transfer, a hedge against large claims, because a single large claim can really spike premiums going forward. So we try to level that risk over time. We have eliminated the risk management director, and we had a part-time occupational health nurse, but we've never filled it, so it's not going to have it won't have a service impact. We have a nurse practitioner and 2 RNs, and we feel that we are capable of handling our customer base. This is kind of just a summary by fund and cost center. There is a big reduction. I do want you to know part of that is related to the volatility of claims and when they hit. So we can have a 0 auto claim year, and the next year can be 400,000. It's just the way claims go through the legal system. I do want to mention some good news, and I rarely get to do that for the city manager. We peaked during the pandemic at $26 million in claims paid annually. It has slowly reverted back to the norm. We're now a little over 23. We didn't overreact to what we knew would be hopefully an anomaly. So, and it's playing out. So, or I should say, it ultimately is reverting back to the norm. So. That is it. So, yes.
So can you tell us, one of the decrements that you have there is the risk manager. Can you explain how that works?
Here today, gone tomorrow. Ms. Curry approached me about a potential way to merge some of these and eliminate a senior management position. There is nobody that is bigger than the organization, Mr. Mayor. So that's the way, yeah. So certainly I'm going to be interested in the position I'm holding, but that is a decision between both me and the city manager. So, but I do think that ultimately it will create efficiency over time. I can tell you, I've been planning and preparing the people that work for me in the management positions and risk management to be able to hit the ground and not miss a beat for when I retire. Okay? I think that is a duty of every senior manager in this organization. I take it seriously, as do everybody else. So, and I got good people. That's why I'm able to do this. I want you all to know that. I'm able to do this because I have absolute confidence in the people I hired in risk management.
So this is a good opportunity to make sure everyone is fully aware that we are in the process of responding to what we were asked to do by the legislature and make these cuts. The number of folks who really doubled down on their work effort and changed some positions and have leaned in to take one for the team, include Mr. Varvel. And there has been an enormous amount of work on the part of lots and lots of folks at a variety of departments at general government and the other charters as well, who have gone above and beyond to get us to a position where we could make good choices here, and to bring choices to the commission. I don't want, Mr. Varvel presents this in such a way that it could seem like everything's okay and that it wasn't a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a very, very big deal. And I did not want that to pass without comment. So thank you.
I appreciate that, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, I failed to mention part of the other reason I'm able to do it is how accepting of my role the folks in OMB have been.
Yes.
There have been no chips on shoulders, anything like that, so it's made it largely seamless, even though I'm trying to kind of catch up to the process. So there's a lot of people that need credit for our ability to do this function right now.
This is a high-functioning team willing to make personal sacrifices, and I appreciate it. Commissioner Willits has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Barbell, under General Insurance Fund Risk Management, I see a reduction of 1.1 million, but only a reduction of 1 FTE. Surely the Director of Risk Management doesn't make $1 million. So where is the rest of that cut really coming from? I don't remember hearing that portion of the cut.
All right, wait, I'm trying to find where the reference point is. So that's going to be largely in our claims expectations, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
So some of those claims, do we respond with contract labor as opposed to city employees, or is that just literally claims paid out?
It's literally claims paid out.
Okay.
So when you have a base year that was a spike year, you have to account for that going forward.
Okay.
Okay.
So does some of those reduced claims paid out also fall under the health and accident benefits fund as well? Because there's a reduction there as well.
Oh yes, yes. We have a lower projection for our claims for the plan year of 24 than we do this year, and that's driven by getting our 12-month rolling averages every month and comparing that to where we were at the same time last year. So.
Okay, so now that I understand it, it just comes from two different pots or funds. Not all of that reduction is in the employee health and accident benefits. Some of it is under general insurance fund. Thank you, Mr. Barbell. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are gonna, if there aren't any more questions.
I don't say any more here.
I could talk about risk management stuff all day. It wouldn't excite anybody. We're gonna move on to our transportation. This is the fleet portion of it. And Jason Foster's here and will walk you through.
Welcome, Mr. Foster.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for having me here. I'm Jason Foster. I'm the Fleet Director for the City of Gainesville, and I wanted to share some information with you about our fleet, about our operation, some of the top accomplishments for this year, and what our budget looks like for this upcoming fiscal year. So, as you can see from the slide, Fleet currently has 29 full-time equivalencies, and we're responsible for 1,580 assets across the board. That includes GRU and general government. We are generally an internal service fund, so most of our services provided are internally, but we do have an external source, which is the airport as well. So we do plan on continuing to have the same number of FTEs moving forward, if approved, and obviously we don't contribute or pull from that general fund. I do want to share some of these top accomplishments because over the past 3 years, our team has seen incredible success, and we've done that through gaining efficiencies through data analytics, through a new asset management system. And so some of those top accomplishments, which started back in 21, we've been in the top 100 of 100 best fleets the last 3 years. We're currently ranked number 40 for 2023. We're currently ranked in the top 50. We've been in the top 50 for the past 2 years, and we're currently one of 1,500 nationally recognized automotive Blue Seal automotive shops. And the only way we can achieve this is by having amazing staff. We do an incredible job with the resources that we have. We've seen reductions in the number of staff we've had. We've been back and forth with the levels of service we're able to provide with the staff that we've had. We've made it through COVID, and we're rebounding and looking forward to the years coming forward.
Let me interrupt you for a second. I don't want these accomplishments to go by and people not hear them. We do that fairly often. We have a lot of departments here in the city of Gainesville that that get lots of accolades within their industry, and we're never talking about it at the commission level. So I don't want that to just fly by without us pointing it out. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is the breakdown of administrative and operations. We recently went through a reorganization, just completed this past January. Some of these numbers will change. The total numbers will remain the same. Fleet administration, that number will be reduced down to 6, and the fleet operations will be a number of 23 allocated in those areas. So like I said, the totals here will remain the same, even though we're just changing some of the structure. At the very bottom left is our current fleet replacement schedule. That schedule is currently going to be $5.251 million this coming year, if approved. And again, I don't want to take away, on the right-hand side, there's some of the things that administration has been doing. Again, we manage 1,580 city vehicles. In the past few years, we've been able to reduce the fleet by 110 vehicles. We maintain service level agreements and policies. And then we've also, just this last year, in 1 year's time, we've processed 13,192 work orders. So it's a pretty large feat for administrative staff to do. And our shop operations and operations as a whole, we're able to contend nationally because of the measures you see here. These are some of the key performance indicators that we track on a regular basis to make sure we're not only competitive with what the standards are for our own fleet and what we need to see, but nationally. So right now, our technician productivity is 85%, which is actually above average for across the industry. Our fleet downtime is 6%, and that's as a whole throughout the year, which is in line with the industry practices. Our availability on any given day is 97% of the fleet is available and ready for operations and ready to roll. We also track reworks, which is the amount of work that comes back to us through error, through parts, through labor, whatever it may be. And we're currently at 1.8%. And we do bill back, or we do credit the departments whenever we do have those occurrences. This is just a breakdown of the salaries and benefits and operating expenses. There's really not too much to look at there. And again, just a different version of that same thing. But I do want to cover, that's really kind of concludes that portion. But in addition to that, in this past February, we approached the city manager, Curry, and had a meeting. And we've had a meeting with Chief Operations Officer at GRU, Brett Goodman. And the topic was fleet utilization. It's one of the areas that we focus heavily on. We want to make sure that the data that we have supports our operations. So in this study, and I don't have a slide to correspond with this, but I can provide the information out loud. In this study, we found 154 units across the organization that are underutilized. With that, there are going to be reasons or justifications for some of those units. But the idea is that we're going to plan and we're working on a policy or changes to policy to make sure that utilization is included in regular operations and daily activities, and that departments are aware that there are minimum requirements for the uses. So on the general government side alone, when we get this implemented, we're looking at about $1 million worth of savings to the general fund through those vehicles and removing those vehicles from the fleet. And we're also working with GRU, like I said, to make sure that we can reduce the overall age of the fleet, not only in general government, but GRU as well. And so with that, it will reduce the overall costs. So, and with that, I just want to say thank you and ask if you may have any questions.
Okay. Any questions on fleet? Commissioner Willets, you good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want you to know how much more I love this format. All right, I am going to go through the non-departmental, and I suspect this will generate some questions and some response. Yeah. So non-departmental is kind of where we budget for those costs. Those really aren't are an organizational-wide and allocate. They're not you can't allocate them to department. Debt service payments, those type of things, the general fund portion of it. The other cost or non-departmental are over 20% of the general fund's expenditures. As you can see, the single largest portion component of that are debt service payments, and those are disproportionately the pension obligation bonds, which is quite frankly, a more cost-effective method of eliminating pension liabilities than paying for it through a contribution rate. Transfers to other funds, this includes our GRU IT service level agreement, and we have some summaries of the citywide programs and grants. I do want to point out that outside agencies that were previously funded in departments or somewhere else have been moved to the non-departmental, and they are funded at 50% of their prior year funding levels. So examples are the Grace Marketplace is $750. We do have an amount set aside as seed money for a at-risk youth seed grant in case that is necessary to transition the Record House program. The Early Learning Coalition, Freedom in Motion. The programs, the largest portion of the program portion of it is the Combined Communication Center. This is an estimate based on the proposed budget that the sheriff will present to the county commission. The SLA with service level agreement, sorry about that, with GRU is 2.9. The general funds portion of the trunked radio system is the 636. The entire amount budgeted is consistent with the motion passed.
Which is approximately, if I might, just to add, I want to be clear, that is about $940-some thousand, the total commitment from the city to the truck radio systems, new layout that the county will take a lead on. We committed 2 years at this rate, and then a step down in the third year, I think of about $750,000. But that 636 is just a portion of the payment that we would be making towards that. The rest of the funding comes from other funds. I want to make sure that that's clear.
Yes. Yeah. So for an example is Public Work has multiple funding, multiple funds that fund their operations. So Stormwater pays a portion of it. The transit system uses the trunk radio system. They pay a portion of it. The General Insurance Fund pay. We have 3 radios for emergency response. So they pay a portion of it. So I do think that it's important that the entire amount is budgeted, just not in the general fund. So some things that we've actually added back. I do want to point out the fare fee program is in non-departmental and was added back in, as is the employee bus pass, which is actually really pro RTS because it is a revenue source without having to increase their service. It's a revenue source for what they're already doing. And the GTEC utilities is a component of the non-departmental. The Parks, Recs, and Cultural Affairs had 2 outside type agency methodologies for providing outside funding. One was through their PAPI program, that Performing Arts program. These are not, they have not awarded anything for 2024, but we thought that it was important that you all knew the type of organizations who received funding in 2023. And that is the same on the special events additional support grants.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, just for clarity, the $71,250 is the proposed allocation to Park, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. It doesn't mean that the organizations that are listed there are at 50%. It simply means that the pot of money for those awards to be made was cut and is proposed to be cut in half. I just wanted to make that.
Okay, so we have a couple lights here. Go ahead, your light.
Thank you, thank you. So are you saying that, oops, are you okay?
Yeah, my chair seemingly. Thankfully, there's plenty of other chairs to choose from up there.
Yes. So are you saying that these organizations would have to reapply and be competitive? It would be a request for a proposal from them?
Yes, ma'am. If I'm not mistaken, the Parks Department puts an application process out for these organizations to apply.
Okay.
And so the Parks Department just has a lesser pot, a reduced pot to be able to award. It doesn't mean that, for example, if I'll use the Gainesville Orchestra, if they got 50,000 this year, that they would only get 25,000. They need to make application for whatever the amount is, and then it would be up to the committee who makes the recommendations to decide what that allocation would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Book?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would this be the appropriate place, Mr. Ravel, our Madam Manager, the Grace Marketplace, to talk just a little bit about Grace Marketplace and the source of the funds?
Sure.
All right, so I would assume that the 750,000, those are ARPA. That's through our ARPA funding sources? Or is this is the general funding, right, for the 1.5 million?
Yes, this is the general fund portion, which is currently budgeted at $1.5 million. And what you see here is 50%.
All right, thank you. So what we know is that, we are getting a tremendous, as a commission, we're getting a tremendous amount of emails about virtually any organization or any situation where we're looking at reductions, and they're painful, and we're already seeing painful reductions with our own internal staff. But on the Grace Marketplace in particular, some of the conversation indicated that they're also getting some additional ARPA funding, and part of that ARPA funding, according to the special advisor, the report that you had prepared, Madam Manager, was they have $300,000, which is currently going towards basically rehabbing a structure on the property. And I mention that because it appears, based on Ms. Ramos's examination, that $300,000 in ARPA funds would be totally appropriate to still be in the Grace Marketplace budget, but could be used for a different purpose, could be repurposed and essentially provide them $300,000 and not impact our budget whatsoever. And that's really what I'm getting at, is attempting to look at that particular piece.
Mayor? Just putting it all. So the report that Commissioner Booker is referring to for Ms. Ramos is she laid out the different funding allocations to Grace. So in addition currently to the $1.5 million, they have a $750,000 allocation from ARPA, as well as another $400,000 allocation from ARPA for outreach. And then there is I believe it's $260,000. Is that the 300 that you're kind of rounding towards?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I think the 300,000 was one of the light items under the ARPA that related specifically to a structure rehab.
Okay, so I believe the structure rehab, I believe it is for the security and the monitoring. Is that what we're talking about, or is that a different amount?
Mr. Carmine, once you come up, you'll be able to answer questions for us.
Thank you. That'd be helpful.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission.
And actually, but before you go, Mr. Carmine, I will say that from my opinion, from where I stand up here, the city of Gainesville doesn't have a homeless services coordinator position. We do some of that through Chief Dixon and things. We have often leaned on Mr. Carmine and his staff as our homeless services division. So I am more than happy to have him kind of stand in for staff to give us details on this sort of outsourced position that we've been using. So.
Thank you. That'd be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The specific funding that Commissioner Book is referring to is separate from the fencing, which was a $260,000 allocation for the city's property that Grace currently operates on. Mm-hmm. What he's referring to is the competitively awarded $750,000 that Grace was awarded. Mm-hmm. Within that $750,000 award, there was $300,000 set aside to renovate a city-owned building to use for program and administrative purposes, considering the funding situation that we're in, where we are contemplating whether we would provide either emergency shelter or unsheltered services. It did not seem to be the best time to be renovating a building. And so we think those dollars could be more appropriately used to supplement whatever funding the city decides to put toward Grace this year.
Yes, if I might, Mr. Intervene. Mr. Carmine, I had to make sure I got the last name. I was going to call you John. Mr. Carmine's comments are correct. Of the $750,000 of ARPA, $370,000 was for salary and fringe, housing stabilization, case manager, and safety advocate, and the $300,000 was allocated of the $750,000 for building renovations, and an $80,000 allocation was for COVID hotel stays, transportation, personal protective equipment, supplies, and test kits. That comprises the $750,000. So the $300,000 that you're referring to, Commissioner Book, that you confirmed is a part of the 750.
Yeah, so thank you. So that's just because when you're looking for pieces that may not impact our general revenue fund, this is a piece within the budget that's already been allocated, that's ARPA related, that could potentially be repurposed if that's allowable under ARPA. And it appears, I see the special advisor is, with that might be a question for Special Advisor Ramos is, does that appear to be allowable use? Because that would provide a significant source of operating dollars without impacting our general budget and has already been provided and awarded by the city.
Ms.
Good
Ramos.
afternoon, Cynthia Ramos, Special Advisor to the City Manager. Yes, what Mr. DeCarmen and I would do is we would work together to put a proposal on how he would like to amend his budget to be within the core ARPA final rule, for which Homeless Services, fits in directly. We would present those changes to the ARPA Action Committee. They would review and make a recommendation then to the City Commission on how to move forward.
All right, so thank you, Ms. Ramos. I guess my understanding on process would be, and Mr. Mayor and Madam Manager, to potentially allow that to go to the committee so that might be able to be used differently with Grace Marketplace. Would that require a motion or simply direction here, or I'm looking for a little guidance myself?
Direction from the commission, because right now, the allocation of 750 includes specifically that 300 being used for building renovations. And so to stay, I guess, consistent with ARPA, rules, regs, just consistency, it would be good if we could get some direction from the commission. Then we would go back and work with Mr. DeCarmine to utilize the 300,000 in a different way. We'd present that back to the commission.
Thank you for that. So would the guidance be in the form of a motion to allow that to go back through that committee, or what would that look like is what I'm asking?
So let's get the full conversation
Yes,
about
sir.
Grace through, and then, I think that would be a welcome motion,
Yeah.
but let's,
Tell me at the appropriate time, and now I've focused,
Gotcha.
that was a particularly large chunk
Yeah.
of monies that we might be able to do something with a little more totally appropriately, but in a way that may benefit more at this time. So thank you.
but we may end up needing something else to go with that motion.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
just figure out, we'll sort
Understood.
through that
Yeah, I
part of
think
the
that's
conversation.
good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're looking at these are all sort of lumped together as just the various nonprofits that we go out to. Are these competitive grants? I guess the PRC outside agency funding is a competitive grant. And then we also have Grace, everything under the grant summary, Early Learning Coalition, Freedom in Motion, Grace Marketplace. Are those like ongoing contracts, or how are those structured with these entities?
The Early Learning Coalition and the Freedom in Motion program, which, by the way, is an RTS program. The 18,100 that's here was actually double that. This represents 15%. The 18,100 represents 50%.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, and if Mr. Gomez is here, I believe this is an allocation to RTS? If you could clarify that for me, please?
To,
'Cause I
and
just
then
want to
back
make
out.
sure before.
Right.
Not sure.
Welcome, Mr. Gomez.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Jesus Gomez of Transportation. Yeah, that's actually to the city manager's office. We manage that portion, and he's,
Let me just ask, is this special transportation services to?
special transportation service,
The
yeah.
elderly community?
The elder care, have a contract with Uber, and we pay those,
Okay.
yeah.
This is the senior citizen.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
the senior citizen.
Okay. So that's what that is. The Early Learning Coalition is a grant. I don't think there's any application process. It's just something that the city has been providing to this organization, and I don't know for how many years, but this is just a direct allocation. And it was double this amount. It was $65,000. So half actually would be $32,500 as opposed to $37,000, as indicated here. But I don't know how long this grant from the city has been in place. And I believe it is managed through the Housing and Community Development Office.
Okay. This feels like sort of a kind of a blunt way to wrap all these up. I understand the need to kind of limit the amount of money when you have competitive grants, and I kind of put these into two different categories. You look over here and you see a number of really great organizations and really good events that really matter a lot for our community, and we're sort of addending what they're currently doing. I was going back through the history of Grace. Of course, I've had a long history. I was the vice chair prior to coming onto here. But Grace Marketplace has been within our community really as a project and a product of the city of Gainesville, and at the time with Alachua County. If you remember back in 2005, we came out with the 10-year plan to end homelessness. John, I believe you were the chair of that, or you worked on that. And realized we did not have a low barrier shelter where we could send people that were living on the streets. We had we had St. Francis House, but if you remember at that time, it was Bo Diddley Plaza was essentially our shelter at that moment. We had tent cities. I remember, if you remember going down the Hawthorne Trail about 10 years ago, there was the large tent city that was over there. We're reading a lot of research was coming out at that time period about how much we spend on police and fire and medical services, and how much we save, and how much money you save simply by treating people with compassion on the front end versus the back end. I have something here from the National Alliance to End Homelessness where it costs $35,578 per year, which is then reduced by 49.5% just by getting people into a safe place where they get air conditioning, where they can get medical services that are not just the emergency services on the back end, but on the front end. But we didn't have anywhere for that to go, and there was the big push to find a location, which took, I think, 7-8 years, because people don't want homeless shelters near their home, so it was constantly, we're here, well, we got to move there. Finally, we own the location that Grace Marketplace is at. And the word Grace Marketplace, John, you can correct me, came out of that community group. The group that is currently doing it is the Alachua County Coalition for the Homeless and Hungry, which kind of serves as the contractor for us to do those services. But this was very much a community effort. They are the ones that are currently doing it. And I was on the board for Grace when we were split between the city and the county. We were on a year-to-year contract, constantly going back to both the city and the county begging for our lunch every year. John was spending most of his time really trying to talk with politicians and try to have good relationships with them, instead of figuring out the kind of the day-to-day relationship on how you manage a shelter. That changed. We're now, and John, maybe you can speak to this, what our structure is but that is now, we have contracted with them. We're in the middle of a contracted period, but it is a very different relationship that we have with the Alachua County Coalition for the Homeless and Hungry, doing the project of Grace Marketplace that came out of the city-county collaboration. John, maybe you can speak more to what the relationship is between our organizations.
Sure, absolutely. So Commissioner Eastman's correct. We are in the middle of, we're on year 3 of a 5-year contract, and we moved to that contract structure because what we had found was exactly what you said, that we were spending 6 months a year justifying our existence, and that cut severely into the amount of time we were actually working to get people off of the street. So as of today, we will be wrapping up our 3rd year of a 5-year contract at $1.5 million currently. Of course, that is subject to commission approval for funding, but that is the current structure for the low barrier shelter. Conversely, the street outreach program, which is currently funded with $400,000 annually of ARPA dollars, was originally funded by the city through GCRA funds, recognizing the work that street outreach does to address blight in neighborhoods. And so year 1 of that project, where we had said, we're not sure if this will work, but if it does, we think we'll house 12 people. Year 1, we housed 141 people to get them off the street and reduce downtown homelessness by 25%. Last year, the commission had the opportunity to shift that over to ARPA dollars. So this current year, we are funded with $400,000 of ARPA funding. The problem is, however, that we have not identified a funding source for future street outreach work.
All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'm seeing here is that we're kind of viewing this like how a number of, as a nonprofit, because it is true that it is a nonprofit that we're contracting with the same as other ones, but to me it's a fundamentally different question. This is a project of the city and county that came out of our 10-year plan to end homelessness. We have made we have pledged to work with the county to say that we're going to be spending $1.5 million. They would spend $1.5 million. They're doing permanent supportive housing, so they're doing one important aspect of how we eliminate homelessness, which is getting people into long-term supportive housing. We're doing the low barrier shelter, which is when someone's on the street, how do you make sure that they have a place where they can get back on their feet, where we can find them resources. And we also have a contract for 5 years with Grace Marketplace, or with Alachua County Coalition for the Homeless and Hungry, of which we're going back on all of those by just kind of putting this into the bucket of we're going to reduce this 50%, just like we are with other nonprofits. I would, I just think it's the wrong way to approach it. I think of it more as like I would approach this more like as though it is a department. There's going to be some cuts to Grace Marketplace at the end of this, I would imagine, but I think 50% seems very large for something that we've been kind of consistently moving into. And I would like to see us come back with something that's more akin to what we're seeing with these other cuts, which is a 20% cut. That's what you're seeing with Office of Sustainable Development. That's what you're seeing with some of, and then try to addend as much as we can from ARPA to move that into there and try to keep through at least the next 2 years of our 5-year contract, funding that at that level so they can continue to do the work they are doing. And I understand that that may be difficult, but I can ask the city manager. I mean, we're looking, would it be possible to find another $350,000? Where would money come from if we were able to continue that contract in at a lesser amount, but to some extent larger than where it is today?
Basically, my response to that, Mr. Mayor, is I would have to go to city departments, and quite frankly, based on the cuts that have already occurred with public service and other categories of expenses, it would be to the public safety category, which would be the fire and police, to look for those funds.
So, I mean, I do think there's some wiggle room in there that they obviously, their budgets went up. That was mostly, contractual based on union contracts. But then also, if I look back on the increases over the last 2 or 3 years in some of our other charters, the city clerk, Office of Equity and Inclusion, and the auditor's position, and there's about $300,000, $400,000 there as well that was that has been increased over the last 2 or 3 years. And I would hope that we could be able to get us to something akin to a 20-25% cut to Grace Marketplace, opposed to the 50% cut, just because I think that we should be treating this more like a department as opposed to more like, unlike, a nonprofit that is just getting a grant in that is addending their regular work, because this Grace would not be here were it not for us working on this, and this is a contract that we're working on. So I'd like to hear what my fellow commissioners said, but I feel very uncomfortable with this. I feel like we're going to be, with these cuts, the kind of cuts we're talking about, and John, perhaps you can speak to it more, but I worry that we're going to be back in a very similar place where we were 10 years ago, where we're talking about police spending a lot more time dealing with our homeless population, our fire department dealing with that more. We're going to be hearing more from downtown business owners. If you guys remember, about 10 years ago, that was a big thing that we were dealing with, is downtown business owners saying, what are we going to do in order to make sure that we are, where there are homeless people that are here, how are we dealing with this? A lot of those we're not talking about like we were talking about back then. We're not in a perfect position. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done, but we're in a much better position. I worry we're going to take a fairly large step back, and it's going to hurt our economic development and cost us a lot more money in other areas, while also being less while hurting the people that are most in need in our community. And so I would really like to find a way to take care of this in a more empathetic and human way. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I have a lot of thoughts on it, but first Commissioner Chestnut, then Commissioner Willits, and then I'll get some thoughts. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Commissioner Chestnut, then Commissioner Sacco, and then I'll okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, Mr. DeCarmine, how much did you say you're getting from the Alachua County Commission this year in their budget, in their 24 budget?
So directly to Grace this year, we have been allocated about $21,000 through the CAP program to support case management.
CAP. Okay, that's the only funding that they provide is CAP?
To Grace directly. Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, indirectly?
Well, the support to the permanent supportive housing program supports the entire continuum of care, because we are placing people into that program just as they may be pulling people from our shelter to go into that program.
Right, and how much do they provide for that? Is that
the budgeted amount for that program is $1.5 million annually.
$1.5 million. Okay, I would have difficulty in providing any more funding than the $750,000. It is not a department of the city. And I appreciate all that is done, but it is not. And we are cutting staff positions. People are losing their jobs. They're losing their jobs in this. I think Grace perhaps needs to look at how to reallocate some of the money, but at 750,000 from APA, 1.5 from the county, 1.5 million from the county, 400,000 from APA, and another 260,000 from APA. I am not inclined to cut public safety, police and fire, so I would have difficulty there. I would say that I would hope that Grace could make it, find a way to revisit their budget and work towards utilizing the funds that they have and utilizing those very well, but I cannot cut city, I don't think we can cut city staff any more than where we have it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Osaka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. DeCarmine or Madam Manager, either of you, I think John might have been, or Mr. DeCarmine might have been around for the first cleanup that we had. Does anyone remember the cost? I believe the city bore the cost of the first Dignity Village cleanup, the dollar amount. I know it was substantial.
I wasn't here. I would research it if I, had a little time, but I wasn't here, so I don't recall.
Mr. DeCarmine, do you recall vaguely or a ballpark number?
I don't. I recall seeing some headlines around millions of pounds of trash, but I know that some of that was done by maybe Keep Alachua County Beautiful. There may have been some haul-off costs, but I don't recall what those were directly. Sorry.
That's fine. Do we remember how much it cost to clean up the old fire station 1? Or at least the daily upkeep and maintenance, because we had to contract public works folks to constantly keep it clean.
I know ultimately, outside of whatever the city may have spent internally, the city did contract with Grace to the tune of something around $65,000 for outreach services, for hotel placements, and for housing placement. And that was about 2/3 of the total housing-related project cost. Grace contributed another $30,000 or so to that.
But that was services, not necessarily cleanup or
Correct. I'm talking
city response.
exclusively about the human services component of that.
So Mike, I think that was also before Madam Manager's time, just before her time at the city. But I do recall it was a continuous rolling expense for us. And I believe, Madam Manager, we had another incident where we had to break down further camps just a couple months ago, maybe around February, where GPD had to be deployed for half a day to break down another camp.
And Public Works.
And Public Works after, yes. Those are not cheap. So I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Eastman on this. While Grace and the work they do are not a legal extension of the city, the work that they do it goes hand in hand with what we do. If, for example, Parks and Rec left kids running around the pool and some kid drowned, our risk department would be up to their neck in lawsuit, and so would the legal department. They would be trying to mitigate the damage by one department not doing their purpose, not fulfilling their purpose. I look at Grace similarly. They are doing much better than we ever could a function of the city that we could not employ and retain and constantly train and put out, but they are able to do it. So that's why we contract out to them. Same way we sometimes contract outside counsel, same way we sometimes contract out financial advisors. There is a skill set that is set up and trained and much more streamlined than if we did it. I think I started volunteering at Grace a couple months after they opened. So I've been going to Grace since the end of 2014, beginning of 2015. And so I've seen a lot of the work that the folks out there do, outreach and at the campus. The cost to doing less is much more. So I'm very much in agreement with Commissioner Eastman on trying to see how a 10 to 20% reduction could be done rather than a 50%, because we will not be saving $750,000. We will be costing ourselves potentially over $1 million or more with the fallout of not fully funding their services, or as close to fully as we can. And I understand, Madam Manager, that you said it would have to come out of public safety funds. My response to that is it's going to cost them money anyway when GFR and GPD are required in their limited numbers and staffing to go to constant calls, because Grace cannot send out an outreach team. Grace cannot have the people power to bring people onto the campus to provide services. So it's kind of a scale where you get to a point where any reduction beyond a certain point does not actually help anyone, not the city and not Grace and not the people it serves. Mr. DeCarmen, you said that first year with the $400,000 that were allocated through the GCRA, you managed to house over 120 people?
Yes, that's correct. I believe it was 141 people in the first 12 months.
141, okay. You said the county's budget is 1.5 million. Do you know how many they've managed to house, securely house per year with that amount?
I don't, and you'll see some different numbers. It's very difficult to compare street outreach housing placement to permanent supportive housing placement, because permanent supportive housing is an ongoing cost of generally $20,000 to $30,000 a year per person, which generates a savings because, as somebody had noted earlier, we're spending $35,000 to $40,000 just by leaving people outside. That's a lot different though than a first month, last month security deposit or a placement in another program. So you wouldn't expect to be able to compare $200,000 generating 141 housing placements to 1.5 million generating another type of housing placement or another number.
That's fair. Thank you for that clarification. I know you sent out, Grace regularly sends out updates, but how many people did you house just last year?
Last year, I want to say it was between 430 and 460. The year before that, it was 562.
Okay. And that would be anywhere from rapid rehousing to permanent supportive to everything in between?
Correct. That's across all of our programs. So the benchmark that we have in our current contract with the city calls for us to move 150 people into permanent housing just out of the emergency shelter. And we have met or exceeded. In fact, we have exceeded that benchmark every year of the contract.
And remind me, not just me, but like the record, all the services offered at the campus. It's not just Grace, it's for lack of a better term, a strip mall of other social services.
It is in fact a marketplace.
Get back on their...
Yes, it is a marketplace of services. That was the original idea. So Grace has developed our expertise in providing housing placement and basic needs. The housing placement, of course, being the only service that will actually end somebody's homelessness, take them from being homeless to being housed. But we couldn't do that without our partners. And those partners on the campus range from healthcare services through Grace Healthcare and psychiatric services through UF Health, mental health services from Meridian, ID and birth certificate services from Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. We've got folks from Career Source who come out there, other folks from Meridian who just help navigate the system, and altogether about a dozen different social service providers who come out there and use Grace as the place where it is easiest to find the people who need their help.
Thank you, Mr. Carmine. And I ask that to prove a point that without a well-funded, well-operating, staffed base like Grace, a lot of those services don't have somewhere to go. So it's not just the folks that Grace is putting into housing, it's the folks that are getting their IDs back. So they are getting driver's licenses. They are getting basic legal services to find a birth certificate. They are serving through our contribution as an amplifier for all those other services and those funds. If Grace cannot operate as close to 100%, as we can help fund it, the value of those services drops as well. I am willing to bet my part-time salary on that. that the services and the quality and the ability and the access will drop. And that will not come at a reduction of cost to other city services, especially on the public safety side. I know it's a hard ask. I know we are required to do this. And I know that other departments are facing other harsh cuts that are painful. We received one email among the couple hundred at this point, I think it's over 100, where we had one person who was a former municipal employee saying, when budget cuts came for my municipality, I ended up homeless with my son. And if it weren't for Grace, I would not have been able to get back on my feet. The last 3 years have been rough for a lot of people for different reasons. I don't see it getting any better. But Grace has helped people get back on their feet, stay housed, stay fed, stay clothed, and find opportunity to move on. Without that opportunity, we are going to be much worse off than whatever money we are saving. We will not be saving that money. We will be spending it 2, 3, 5-fold, trying to shore up the damage it causes. I am glad that we have brought back in some programs, some smaller, helpful programs that we voiced concern over losing. I would trade those and all of its funding to make sure our community has the ability to go out and reach the people most in need. Thank you, Mr. DeCarmine. I'm moving on, so I don't want you to have to stand there. Madam Manager, the at-risk youth seed grant, that is a potential earmark in case we find a new nonprofit to home the Riker House services.
That is, and it is earmarked as after-school care programs, which would be a follow-up or a transition to a community-based organization who would be able to provide those services. That is a set-aside. And you would ask a question, if I might just take this brief opportunity. I got some information from staff regarding, I guess, cost associated with cleanup around Grace. I'll read what I have here if I can. Total cost for the one-time work around cleanup was $951,589. And this is cleanup of South Main Street downtown, cleanup of Interstate 75 interchanges, cleanup of Grace Marketplace, as well as general facility maintenance at Grace, and other one-time costs associated with HVAC unit replacement, upgrades, renovations to the laundry room, installed no trespassing signage and drainage improvements. All of that summarized $951,589.
950,000.
Yes. Yes, Commissioner.
So $1 million. And that is one time or overall?
One time.
Okay. And as far as the seed grant, it's earmarked, but we do not have a named partner or a considered partner. Is the intent to hold that until we vote on a final budget, or to keep it past October?
I can't hear. I didn't hear it.
I'm sorry. Is the intent to keep it earmarked until the last possible second when we vote on a budget, or to keep it as seed money in the budget moving forward past October 1st when we do find a partner?
Thank you, if I might, Mr. Mayor. The intent is to keep it in the budget until we are able to regroup and put something together to put out. It would have to be around a competitive process. And so it's going to take us a little time to get there. And so, yes, based on the fact that those services were cut and there's a concern that there's a hole, in the continuum of care, if you will, around the support for young kids at risk, we thought it was the right thing to do to put that set aside there for the commission if they choose to move forward with the transition agency to provide those services. And so it could be there beyond October 1.
as an assistance to whatever nonprofit we select after a competitive bid.
That is correct. That would not be the sole funding for that, because there is movement in the community to be prepared to provide those services at the onset of the school year.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all for now.
Thank you, Mr. Sacco. Is that Commissioner Willets? Okay, Commissioner Willets. Commissioner Willets, you go, then I've got some things to say, then we'll go back around.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I lean towards what Commissioner Eastman is saying, that it's, to some degree, this is Grace Marketplace is a service really that we fund because it fulfills part of the mission of what a city could or should do. I don't know that I completely agree with Commissioner Sacco that it will be a one-for-one, even what we decrease funding there, it'll pick up in other areas. I think there's not enough numbers and data there. Should we cut by that amount? I sure hope someone is paying attention to the numbers and doing research after that, because this would be a real example of that kind of shift in funding, where those services get done. Is it in a planned, strategic, well-studied and well-supported way, or is it in essence their emergency services through public safety and or these very expensive cleanups? I think this helps me understand, and hopefully it helps other people understand that the work that we do towards our our homeless neighbors, it's not cheap. It's not $100 here or there. When you add in the cleanup of homeless encampments, we're talking about a lot of money, as Mr. Carmine mentioned. They're possibly $30,000 to $40,000 per person in annual services when people are unhoused, and we just have to continuously care for them through public safety or other means. So I know we still have probably a $3 million hole in the budget to fill. While that's still out there, I don't think we can promise much of anything. But I lean towards the idea that it should be cut closer to 25% as opposed to 50% this year. I'm still interested to see where we can have further cuts within prudent behavior and state law. I think we do have to look at public safety to see where we can continue to streamline and to save funds there. I wish we had direct data on, because we funded Grace Marketplace, this is the less services needed through public safety, so we could have a more of a one-to-one. I know that's data, it's hard to correlate those perfectly in a complex system, but I lean towards that because this is a very big cut, and these are to our neighbors who need help the most. So I think that's all I have. There's a lot of thoughts and emotions about this. I agree with Commissioner Chestnut, though, that we are cutting staff, employees. This is not the first place we came. To some degree, this is the last place we came. Many departments have already been touched. Most departments have been touched by budget cuts and actual staff cuts, whether they're unfilled or filled. So I was so cognizant of that. But if we still have a $3 million hole to fill, it's going to come down to some very difficult decisions like this, and it may be 50% versus 25% reduction. But it is still, in essence, I agree with Commissioner Eastman that it is, in essence, a service. We just choose, rather than to create an entire department and deploy staff in that manner, we try a way that possibly is more efficient because we don't have to keep that expertise on staff. Also, I doubt if this was 100% done to the city, we certainly can't get we probably wouldn't be able to get a lot of donations the way Grace Marketplace can, because this nonprofit has that kind of community support. I welcome anyone who wants to donate to the city for this purpose, but Grace Marketplace is more of they definitely can pull in that other funding stream that we perhaps don't always have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willets.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just intervene. Sure. So we got a little sidetracked on the Grace piece. We need to finish the presentation, if I might suggest, please. Because once it's summarized, we'll come right back to this discussion because things will be put in perspective, if you will.
Okay, I'll hold my comments until we do that. I feel like I'm going to start bringing an easel and a whiteboard, because when we do these, when we start talking about, we'll take this from here and put it there and then we'll do the other thing, I've got it on my notes, but to really get the point across, to do it just vocally is challenging. So I'm not joking. I'm going to start bringing a whiteboard with me just to help make this more clear. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, you're not the only one taking notes, so.
Yeah.
so.
But my notes
So,
may be different. So.
Yeah. And if they are, you will point it out. So, and that's why we do this, and that's why we did it as a special meeting, so we can get that type of direction from the commission. All right. This is where I get to turn it back over to the city manager, and she'll go through the summary and hit the highlights and lowlights of where we are. Sure.
In case I need to highlight some pieces on the slide. So we're at slide 34, which is a summary of revenues and expenses specifically for the general fund. The slide provides an overview of current expenditures and revenue projections for the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. In order to get to this point, we have taken a hard look at both sides of the budget. On the revenue side, we implemented a revenue estimating conference led by the Department of Financial Services to review all of our revenue sources and to ensure projections are realistic to identify other new sources of revenue. On the expense side, we implemented a continuous improvement review committee to budget development that reviewed all departments after the zero-based 10 and 20% decrement exercises were addressed. The diligent work of all of the participants in this comprehensive budget development process, which has come with many hard decisions and recommendations, resulted in the information on this slide. We started the budget workshops on May 2nd with an estimated $18 million gap, and overall, we have made progress and are now at a gap of $1.7 million. And here's how we got there. The proposed revenues, the property tax projections, which is at the top there on the left-hand side. The property tax projections includes an assumption already of a millage rate that will increase from 5.5000 mils to 6.500 mils. The preliminary taxable value estimate received June 1 from the Property Appraiser's Office was $10 billion, a growth of 11.2% over last tax year. The combined growth on the roll and proposed increases in millage rate are estimated to generate $14.9 million in property tax revenue. The final taxable assessed value for fiscal 24 budget is expected on July 1. That number may go up or down depending on what that final roll is. I believe the new construction on the roll of $10 billion was approximately $260-some million in terms of 270 million in new construction. The fire assessment projection, which is also listed there. The fire assessment projection reflects the new methodology based on square footage and the City Commission's prior direction to set the rate at 51.68% of assessable budget, generating an estimated revenue of $11.5 million, which generated $2.1 million over last fiscal year projected. The miscellaneous permit section of the revenue shows a reduction over last fiscal year due to moving the rental inspection program fees out of the general fund to a special revenue fund. The intergovernmental revenue projections show an increase over last fiscal year due to an increase in indirect cost allocations. Transfers/other sources projections are primarily reduced due to the removal of the one-time government services set-aside funded by ARPA. If you recall, last year we balanced the budget using a little over $4 million of ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act money, to balance the budget as opposed to using any fund balance. And so we're not using that revenue source this year. The government services contribution or general fund transfer from GRU reflects the amount approved by the City Commission's new methodology. It's a decrease of $18.9 million or 55.3% over fiscal year 2023. The total reduction year over year for revenue is $2.9 million, assuming a $1 million increase. Without that increase, we would be at least $10 million higher. Expenses are broken down into four major expense categories: public safety, public services, administrative services, and non-departmental expenses. And they are categorized on the screen to your right with an orange line across the top representing public safety, et cetera, et cetera. As shown in the circular chart, the largest expense category for the general fund is public safety, representing $68.9 million or 44.9% of the general fund expenditures. Fire Rescue's proposed budget is $27.7 million, an increase of $5.6 million over the last fiscal year. The proposed budget reflects a more accurate budget For overtime expenditures, a change to 24/72 shift schedule, which is expected to help with recruitment challenges and overtime. The high number of vacancies is currently a big driver. Overtime expenses, we hope will be settled down after the implementation of this program. The proposed budget also adds one position to this department. For police, the proposed budget is $41 million, an increase of $4.3 million over last fiscal year. And again, this is budgeting for overtime on the front end of the budget as opposed to the back end of the budget. The proposed budget reflects an accurate budget for overtime and, of course, decreases on the public safety side, a total of 3 positions. The second largest expense category of the general fund is public services, representing $39 million, or 25.5% of the general fund's expenditures. The proposed budget shows a reduction of 50.7 FTEs. The proposed budget includes the elimination of the juvenile justice and community support programs, a significant reduction in parks, recreation, and cultural affairs, sustainable development, and public works departments. The position count will probably go back up 3 because you will hear a little later that we have placed the Ironwood program back in the budget, both revenues and expenses, and that included 3 positions being reduced. And so those positions would be going back in. The remaining juvenile justice community support services, the bold portion of that program will be transferred back to GPD at the beginning of the fiscal year. The third largest expense category on the general fund is non-departmental expenses, representing $31.3 million, or 20.4% of the general fund's expenditures. The primary expense reduction for this area is the reduction of all community-based organization funding, reduced to 50% of the fiscal year 2023 level. The final expense category of the general fund are administrative services expenses, representing $14 million, or 9.2% of the general fund expenditures. The proposed budget shows a reduction of 18.5 full-time equivalent positions. The proposed budget includes significant reductions in almost all departments. The Department of Financial Services, which the Commission has identified as a critical area for stabilization in the strategic plan, shows a reduction of an FTE because the FTE is now funded from the regional transit system. It is not really a reduction of an FTE, and I will add that as I continue to work with Sue Wong in stabilizing her department, we may have some additional recommendations to come forth there. Overall, proposed expenditures for the general fund total $153 million, a $1.3 million decrease over the fiscal year 2023 budget. This includes eliminating not 71.2 budgeted positions, but 68.2, because I reduced the 71.2 by the 3 positions that we placed back in for Ironwood. Of which 24 of the positions are filled. On slide 35, Steve, on this slide, we are showing the revenue changes and a consolidated expense table. The takeaway from this slide is that the public safety expense category has grown significantly, and the others have adjusted downward. Since the last budget workshop, the following changes are reflected. We added back in the Fare Free program totaling $115,000, that's in non-departmental, and placed the regional transit system on management watch to review in more detail the grant reconciliation and the fund disposition. We've also placed on management watch Ironwood Golf Course. Revenues and expenditures are back in. This proposal for 24, and as we discussed, I've discussed this individually with each commissioner. Management watch is when management places certain departments or programs in a position where they go through scrutiny relative to their revenues, relative to their operational policies, procedures, fee structures, the whole 9 yards. RTS's management watch is really targeted towards making sure that the grant reconciliations have been done properly, and that we are giving the commission a true picture of if the city is subsidizing the RTS program, or if there is truly just a gap there in terms of grant reconciliation. On the Park, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs Ironwood side, it is a complete review of their operations and their revenue structure, fees, etc. And we would do that effective today, and we would work through that for the next several months, as long as it takes for us to have the proper review committee in place, internal as well as some external participation on those committees, to look at those policies, procedures, operational, norms back and forth, make a recommendation to the commission as to how we proceed. And with that, I'd like to talk about the fact that where we end up relative to revenues and expenses proposed for next year. The gap is about $1.7 million, $1,666,919, and we're still pending certain budget information. There are still departments that we'd like to be able to review. Several charters have yet to provide information for us to possibly include in this budget. We need to be final with the roll from the property appraisal. We won't be getting that until July 1 or shortly after. We still need to get revenue information updated from the State Revenue Sharing Conference on the state level so that we can update those numbers. We believe they are probably estimated right now very conservatively, and we would hope to get some level of increase in those dollars. We need to make sure that the final millage rate is set, and of course that's due to be set on July 20th. But we are making a proposal, we're making assumptions. We don't know what that millage rate will be because it is clearly up to the commission to make that decision. And so with that, we are at a net deficit as of today of $1,666,919, pending any changes that the commission asks us to make today, and then we will have to go back and make adjustments accordingly. $1,666,919.
So, Madam City Manager, I want to go back two slides. I do want to point out that the city auditor came back to us unsolicited, no request, and proposed an additional cut to her budget. And it is included in this slide and was not part of their original proposal.
We got a whole round of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're done.
Oh, okay.
We good?
Yeah, I promised Breck I would do that, so.
Okay. Okay. So, and stay on deck there, Commissioner Book. We did not forget you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So lots and lots of things to cover. And I'm going to remind everybody about those 4 items up there. We do not have all the revenue information yet. We have certainly budgeted revenue conservatively. I'm confident that what we're looking at now is a question of, with the recommendations for expenditures that we have in front of us, we need to, if not completely today, mostly today, give our thoughts back to the manager, and then she will balance with staff what, if we want more in one category, something else has to get smaller. First, I want to address, and I'll flip back to page 33, the program summary for PRC outside agency funding.
Want me to go back to it?
Yeah, if you would, please. There are a couple of important points within that, including that we fund an agreement traditionally among 3 arts organizations, the Hippodrome, Dance Alive, and Gainesville Community Orchestra, or Gainesville Symphony Orchestra, but Gainesville Orchestra as it's written here. We call that the PAPI grant, and I forget what PAPI stands for, but traditionally we have funded a number for that, and then those 3 organizations figure out how to split it amongst themselves. That's what we have done with that for many, many years. That number mostly hasn't changed. These other organizations you see listed there, they apply to PRCA, and the funds are distributed from that. So again, we're not taking, it does not necessarily mean that they're going to be cut each one 50%. That's far more complicated and complex than that, but it moves off our desks onto other desks after we pick the total amount. For Grace, we started with, and this is where the whiteboard would come in real handy. We start with $1.5 million contract, not handshake deal, not aspirational, wouldn't it be great if we did this, but a contract that we're going into the 4th year. Okay. Fiscal 24 is the 4th year of that contract. which we haven't updated, haven't been asked to update for inflation. So it's a flat $1.5 million for services. That doesn't count the other things that we funded, which include $750,000 separately from ARPA that we awarded, awarded to Grace, which is where Commissioner Book's idea of $300,000 reallocation comes in. So if we take that $1.5 million and we subtract $750 from it, then we're at $750 recommended funding, and we add back in $300. That puts us at $1,050,000, which leaves a deficit of, what did I get wrong there? Right. So we're at a deficit of $450,000 on that contract for next year. So that is, to my mind, if we accept this number, the ability to move that 300, then we're looking at a refunding somewhere in there or a deficit of $450. I absolutely hear you, Commissioner Chestnut, and for that matter, everybody's right about this. You're all making entirely valid points. There's nothing that's wrong here. It's just a bad situation that we have to pick through. When we cut Grace funding, we're not saying get by with less. What we're saying effectively is we're okay with more people sleeping downtown. And that, I don't mean that in any kind of pejorative, ethical sort of way, but that's just what it ends up being, is people don't get a place to sleep. And they're not going to go away. They're not going to, my experience volunteering there tells me they're not going to just say, I can't sleep at Grace, I'm going to get a job. That's not the way that's going to work. These are chronically homeless folks. They're not people who are occasionally sleeping in a car because things worked out bad. I do remember very clearly what Bo Diddley Plaza was like before Grace, and the real logistical impact to downtown for that. And not just to downtown, but to neighborhoods throughout our city, many of which have homeless camps right now. Those homeless camps were a lot worse, I'll remind everybody, 10 years ago. They were a public health hazard and a public safety hazard to some degree. We didn't just get homeless folks when we started Grace Marketplace. That is a reality. I do think it's true we're going to spend more money from our public safety budgets than we're going to save by not spending more money on this than the $750. I wish that weren't true. And I want to remind everybody that before we had this budget crisis, we started talking about the fact that if we're going to solve chronic homelessness in our community, we cannot expect it to be just the responsibility of the City of Gainesville organization and Grace Marketplace. We cannot. We will fail if that's what we expect. And everybody at the swearing in from a variety of organizations out in the audience clapped and said, "You're absolutely right. That's great." And their budgets don't reflect it. I know that other organizations, other institutions in our community do some other things that do contribute in various levels of directness. But if we're talking about housing people tonight and getting them the services, the wraparound services that they need to try to get better, so that we don't end up arresting them and so they don't end up at the emergency room, then investing in Grace is the best thing that I've seen our community able to do. It doesn't mean there aren't other things out there that are potentially better, but it's all I've seen our community able to do that gets the results. And I am, regardless of what we do, I am renewing that call to the other institutions in our community to step up. And when I say step up, I don't mean thoughts and prayers. I mean checks. We are in a difficult situation at the city of Gainesville because we do have a manufactured budget crisis on our hands. Not everybody does. It's budget season for everybody, institutionally, local government-wise. We are serving people at Grace Marketplace who, many of whom, grew up in the city of Gainesville and used to have other residences in the city of Gainesville, but not all of them. Some of them came from the unincorporated Alachua County area. I'm just saying. There are other responsibilities, other opportunities for other institutional partners to actually be direct partners in this operation. We can't fix that right now, although I'm certainly going to have that conversation a lot more often. What we have in front of us right now, if we accept Commissioner Book's, I think, excellent idea, we've got a $450,000 other gap in debt funding. When we talk about it coming potentially from the public safety budgets, I want to remind everybody, and there are reasons for this, I get that everything has a reason, but the public safety budgets are up 16.9%. So we're not talking about lowering the budgets from our current fiscal year. We're talking about finding some places where we could shave $450 from that $9.9 million that we've agreed to increase the public safety budgets. And I know that is easier said than done. I'm not throwing it out there as if it were no big deal and you can get it done by this afternoon. I understand that. But understand that when I say, well, let's look for that $450 from somewhere else, I'm not talking about firing people. I am absolutely aware that we are talking about laying off 24 people who work for our organization already. I get that. Madam Manager, if you would remind us about our plan for moving those folks, for trying to help them into different positions. You've got a name for that, and I forget what it is.
It's the Pipeline Committee, Mr. Mayor, and yes, we have instituted a pipeline committee chaired by Laura Gretz and Yvette Carter, excuse me. They have started to assign coaches to each of the individuals who are impacted, positions that are filled, to work with them, to update resumes and to review any vacancies throughout the city, to include GRU, to put them on a track to make application and be given priority if all things line up to be able to fill those positions with impacted people whose positions are eliminated from the budget. We're not adding positions to accommodate, they are taking existing vacancies if their skill sets and experience matches. And we're being very diligent and very intentional about that. Ms. Gretz is here. She can speak to it. It is a top priority for me to make sure that we're putting forth that effort and that we're very sincere about working with those individuals that have been impacted. The county offered assistance in terms of vacancies that they have. Ms. Carter is also working with CareerSource to try to set up a career fair or a job fair. Even as I was speaking with Commissioner Book the other day in my one-on-one with him, he suggested that we connect with Santa Fe, the HR office there, to see what assistance they may be able to offer in terms of vacancies there. But we are making a concerted effort to make sure that we can match the 24 people with any position opportunities that we know of.
Very good. Thank you. So we do have more people to hear from. I would, after we clear the lights here, then I do want to hear from the community, and then we'll come back and hopefully hear at least one motion and maybe more. I may have more to say later, but that's a whole lot for right now.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to hear that at least you are not looking at eliminating additional positions to accommodate that, because $750,000 equates to 10 to 13 people. I'm
Right.
just saying, that's a lot.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Eastman.
Can we go back to the slide that shows the $1.6 million?
That's the last slide.
Very last one.
Slide 36.
I was going to jump right back into Gray's, but it really just struck me as we got to this last one, just how grateful I am for how much staff has put into this. I mean, when I came onto this commission and was told that we were going to be making cuts that would be 3 times the size of what we did in 2008 during the crash, and when Madam Manager, you came forward and said that you were recommending these, and I said, are we sure that these are the cuts you wanted to do? I was, I wasn't sure where we're going to be here, and I'm looking at a chunk of money that is is possible. I mean, 1.6. And I want everyone out there that's hearing to really try to understand the weight of all this. I mean, because Madam Manager, you went through this quickly, but we get dinged sometimes as a government that does that. That we're moving forward, that we might not be listening, and you were heard. I mean, Ironwood, and you moved quickly through this. We are working to save Ironwood. We are listening to the community. We are going to be putting it on a management watch, and we are going to be working to find a way to keep that going. I want everyone in the community to really understand the weight of that. If this is something that you support, please get your friends out to Ironwood. Please continue to support that as we move forward, so that we as a city can keep that moving. Fare free was something that we heard about a lot, as something that we were cutting that got put back in the budget. Just as a whole, we are looking at a budget that is not that is doable. I mean, that is going to hurt. That is going to have. There's going to be a loss in some of the services and some of the maintenance that we are doing. It is a loss of certain of staff, of people that are in there. We will not be providing services to the level, but it is something that at the core, we are still providing a lot of the arts and culture that makes Gainesville the place that it is. We are providing much of the public works and that we have provided before, a lot of the services that we provided before. And if the 1 mil is increased, we're talking about a tax rate that is less than Orlando's, less than Ocala's, significantly less than what the county charges in their millage rate. None of this is good. All of this is really hard. The state of Florida really asked for a significant amount of cuts. It is an amount of cuts. I will point out that when Representative Clemens was on the county commission, he did not make these amount of cuts. He actually raised taxes quite a bit. When he was on the county commission, we here at the city are cutting. We are doing this in a way that I am just incredibly impressed with all of the work that has gone into it. To you, Madam Manager, to all the staff that has done this behind the scenes, I just very grateful for where we are here today, and sorry that this has to happen, but also very happy in the knowledge that we have such great staff that has put so much thought into trying to provide these services, and I think that we are in very good hands with this. I did want to ask. John DeCarmine, leaping back onto Grace. John, we were talking about service cuts and where services. Have you looked at the levels of service cuts that would be coming in at, say, $750,000 versus various other levels? What is that going to look like?
We have taken some broad looks at it right now, just to get a sense of what we would be able to do. At the $750,000 level at half funding, we would basically be forced to choose between having a reduced sized emergency shelter or providing services for unsheltered people. So at that level, we cannot do both. Certainly when we look at day services, right now we're providing 3 meals a week. Of course, downtown St. Francis House is providing breakfast for people, so we would probably cut that meal since people would have another meal available for breakfast, and then they could return to Grace for lunch and dinner. We may, if we were to reduce another meal, then we may look at lunch instead. Would remind the commission that we actually had not served lunch, nor are we contractually obligated to, but instead, on the day that the city reopened the Bo Diddley Community Plaza, we chose to start serving lunch to make sure that people wouldn't have any real incentive to go back downtown when they could instead stay up at Grace. If we were looking at the $1.2 million level, at that point we would still be, which is a 20% cut, we would still be able to do both emergency shelter and we would be able to do services for unsheltered people, though there would probably probably be reductions in size and hours for both of those, for the unsheltered portion at least. And at 1.5 million, we would continue to operate the 100 shelter beds that we're contractually obligated to do, but there may still have to be some reductions, as we've talked about with inflation adjustments over the past year. Certainly a 5-year contract signed in 2019 with inflation being what it is, we would require about $1.8 million just to be able to buy what we could for 1.5 in 2019. So that gets us whole in terms of the contracted amount. We can work with that amount, and that would look like that 20% cut plus that $300,000 that Commissioner Book had mentioned coming from existingly allocated ARPA funds.
Because that 300,000 is, I mean, that's going to just be a 1-year cost. I mean, so you're still going to have to make these cuts, even with that in there, within probably the next fiscal year. But at least it would be kind of more of a slope down to that within some kind of minimal.
Right. We're with our backs against the wall here, we're not looking to make any decisions about year 5 of the contract at this point. Let's get through year 4, and then we'll have a year to figure out what we need to do that's best for the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I would like to get us to a point where we're getting somewhere close to the to what we had agreed to with Grace in the past, and then try to allocate some of that. I do think that, as I said, I would kind of equate what we were doing at Grace Marketplace as similar to what we're doing with other departments within our city, and I think there's going to have to be some cuts there, just like there is across the board. But I would like for it to be something that is akin to what we're doing in other parts of the city, and not the kind of deep cuts. But I'd like to hear the motion from Mr. Book, and then I'll probably have for Commissioner Book, and then probably put a motion on the table myself. So thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Chestnut next, and then before we go to the public, we're going to take 10 minutes. So,
Oh, good.
all right, yeah. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. Well, we have quite a conundrum here. And what I think we have to be mindful of, we're trying to be all things to all people, and we cannot do that. We have an $18 million deficit we're trying to make up for. And so in doing that, you can provide some programs, you can provide some funding, you cannot provide the total funding. What I'm sitting here, what's going through my mind is that we have cut city staff. When you cut staff, you're cutting their families, you're cutting what they're going to be able to do for after school with their children, you're cutting how they're going to eat. These are people that work for us today. They will be without a job. That's one. We are pitting senior citizens against the homeless. You're pitting senior citizens against, you're pitting children who need after-school care against the homeless. Our commitment has to be to all of them with a little bit of funding. I don't see how in the world we can fund Grace Marketplace at $1.5 million and not fund our own staff, not bring our own people back, and provide for senior citizens. Senior citizens must be provided for, as well as these after-school programs. So we have to really stop and think about that. I'm happy to see Ironwood back in the budget. Ironwood can be a revenue generator, and that's why I'm happy it's going to be under management watch. I'm glad that we're putting the fares for youth and the fares for senior citizens back in the budget. I am happy that we have the Freedom in Motion in the budget, which provides for senior citizens at the Senior Citizen Center for them to have some transportation services. I would like to see the Cultural Arts Coalition, a program we have funded for 44 years. I'd like to see that brought back at $25,000. Any motion that is made, I want to attach that to it. I am happy to see that we are trying to provide for at-risk youth after school. You have to stop and think about that. You've already taken away jobs from their parents. The youth need somewhere to go after school. We need a program. We need a program for them. And the community is working on providing an after-school program. I think we have to be behind that. Now, I think we need to go to the community, and I support Pappy. We have to go to the community for the community to provide more support. Maybe the community can help to come up with the $750,000, but we cannot balance senior citizens, children, all of our other programs on the backs of the homeless. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I don't see any other lights. We're going to go take 10 minutes. Well, we'll be back at 3:30, and then we'll hear from the folks in the audience here, and hopefully get some motions up here following that. All right, see you back at 3:30. We are recessed. Like 3:30 to me? Okay, so before we go to public comment, Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I go to my comments, I too want to thank staff for the excellent job that they've done in putting this budget together. And we've heard, yes, they really deserve a round of applause. We've heard the budget cuts are decrements, as they like to say, decrements from general government and from GRU charter officers. I would like, before we hear from the public, I'd like to know or to receive more information today from the Charter Office for Equity and Inclusion and from the city clerk. What else can you offer up to help us in this process? So, Mr. Mayor, if they could comment, please.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Mr. Folston, you have something for us?
It does allow us to hear a little more of the full picture.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so sorry. Forgot about it. I apologize. Zariah Folsom, Director for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Commissioners. I echo, like you, thank you to the staff. I used to be a budget analyst in another life, so I remember what this time of year was like and the times you spend away from your family, just the late nights and the hard work that they put in. So thank them so very much. You are correct. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We're going to be making an additional $131,000 approximately in cuts. We're going to cut a equity specialist position. Right now, currently, it's called a compliance investigator position. But if you remember at the last meeting, I told you our policy is when you have a person who's serving interim that they have a place to go back to. And so that position is just a position we're going to end up eliminating as well as we're going to make a general fund, again, reduction of $34,000 in operating costs and expenses as well.
131, Mr. Mayor, is he saying 131?
Yes, ma'am. So our total cut is going to be $163,162, of which $31,000 and some change is already reflective in the budgets that you have in your hand. So the difference of that amount is what is going to be cut. All right.
And do you mind? And
Sure.
where does that leave your budget for 2024?
I think it's going to be at 1.4 million. Hold on, I can give you the exact number. 1.4, so $1,468,459 and approximately 72 cents. But who's counting?
Who's counting?
Okay, we round up to $1. I just wanted to be specific. Yeah, so 147,67207.81 cents. Again, that new number will be $1,467,207.81 for a reduction of 10.08% is what our new reduction will be. Any questions?
How many, so that leaves how many unfilled FTEs do you currently have?
That'll leave, I think, approximately 2, because to meet that budget number, 2 of the positions that I currently have now, they'll be made permanent.
Okay.
What's the position reduction? Just net position reduction.
Net position reduction will be 2. So 2 FTEs.
Okay, so.
Thank you to my budget analysts.
And 163,000.
Right. And we transfer, don't forget, we transferred the position out of the general fund that's in the ARPA fund. Also keep in mind that position will start being recruited for, actually interviews start next week. So we're excited about that as well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, you are.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that is a very good beginning. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, so just a clarification, and so also in the, in E&I, the mere fact that we have you as an interim actually keeps 2 positions there, so there may be some realized savings. We're just not going to see it on a reduction of position. Am I accurate about that, Mr.
Yes,
Director?
sir. You'll see
Okay.
additional savings. Yes, sir.
So it's this, then some, Potentially, it's just not an eliminated position. It's a position that's being occupied by a person. So I agree with Commissioner.
Thank you guys so much.
Chestnut. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And the clerk's office, did you have?
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Jennifer Lynch, Deputy City Clerk. While I don't have specific numbers here, I'll be meeting with the clerk shortly to come up with some additional cuts for you, and we'll have those available as soon as possible. We'll certainly look at, initially the thought was looking at operations only, but we'll certainly be looking at personnel too, and how we can combine or reduce, or, well, combine our services, but still be efficient and effective in what we do. But I'll definitely be meeting with the city clerk, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so without any, go ahead. Yep, and then we're going to go to the people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But since this was brought up, I appreciate the reduction in the cost for officer equity inclusion, and then of course we'll hear from the clerk. I will just reiterate what I put out before, which is that that the city clerk and OEI were some of the larger increases over the last 5 years. It was OEI had a 79.47% increase from 2019 to 2023, and the city clerk was a 56.39%. So that's about, what was this? Okay. I keep doing this on different lines because I keep playing with my spreadsheet here, but from 2020 to 2023, there's been a $579,000 increase in the city clerk and a $231,000 increase in OEI, but the real increase in OEI and city clerk were in 2019. We've seen close to, anyway, there are large increases, I guess. I have many spreadsheets in here. There are large increases in here. I'd like to see us keep kind of chipping away at this and maybe come back to it because, with some open FTEs that are in there and maybe have a more formalized look at this in the future. But I do think it is a good start. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Folsom?
Zariah Folsom, Director for the Office of Equity Inclusion. He is correct, and I think you said the last 5 years, it's been 200 and something increase.
My 5-year mark might be.
Okay. Well, the reason for
years.
Yeah, last several years.
The last several years. Just keep in mind that the disparity study alone was over $207,000. So that study alone was the bulk of that, and that study is over with. We've made the last payment, and you'll be hearing a presentation for them here in the summer.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, who do we have to speak to us?
Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker, Mr. Chuck Ross.
Just one?
Yes.
Wow, okay. All right. Welcome, Mr. Ross.
Good afternoon, Chuck Ross. I'm not going to get any of my questions. I'm just going to thank all the people that worked on this, and it sounds like they're doing an excellent job. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, well, I guess a number of the people who were here earlier have left. So, okay. And they're not outside waiting, we don't think?
No, Mr. Mayor. I have
Okay.
one card.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Book, do you want to revisit your motion idea there?
Yes, please. Thank you. I suspect, Mr. Mayor, that some of the people that left probably had some of the issues that the manager has already taken upon herself to address. And as a result, here we are sitting with some decisions that have been made. I think there were good decisions on the manager's side that allow us to kind of move forward a little more efficiently, so that's appreciated. So this is realistic and painful things that we're going through, and we're still in the red. That's my mind. We're still in the red, and when I look at the 68 positions on the city side, on the city general manager side, 2 EI, 20 on the GRU that we forgot to mention. Those are 20 vacancies. That's roughly, whether they're vacancies or people, it is 90 positions that we're talking about. That's incredible from the city, and that is a lot of people impacted in many ways. Commissioner Chestnut talked quite a bit about that, so I won't belabor that fact. But this is just starting internal and looking out, and we do have to start internal look out because the services that we provide as core services, whether it's public safety, whether it's frontline, whether it's transportation, whether it's our, our civic and labor unions, we have to start with those. And that means it is painful. So looking here, I think what we've probably cobbled together is some things that can do some work back for Grace Marketplace, but I'm not in favor of us not reducing. And so what we reduce is really probably what's at issue. I think this is the motion. I'm going to add one piece. And then I heard Commissioner Chestnut add something. I'm probably just going to add I'm going to need some context on that. But in speaking on the motion, remember what we've got for Grace, looking at the funding sources, is essentially right now $750,000. That's 50% that's been proposed. And it's cutting across not just Grace, but many other organizations that are doing unbelievably meaningful work. On slide, whatever it was, 33. Yeah. $260,000 they've gotten for security, which is certainly needed. That's a public safety thing. $400,000 was the outreach program, which is currently in place. It is due to expire. By all means, if you have something that might be helpful for context, you place it up on the screen. That helps me too.
Page 33.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura.
We've also heard about some collateral costs that were one-time, over $1 million of things, meaningful, things like cleanup and other departments that work on that. And then you have this thing called the $1.5 million continuum of care. That's funded through the county, but it also funds pieces of all the different things that get people from basically in a homeless area to hopefully permanent housing, which I agree, and do some other things to address mental health and addiction stuff. And that continuum of care is interesting to me because that's determined by the county. So that leads to this motion, and then something that just need a little more discussion if we have the time, Mr. Mayor. So the motion, I think, it's a little complex, is so approve, this is a piece of cobbling together something, approve ARPA funding of $300,000 currently allocated for a building project. And it's moved to allow for other Grace Marketplace uses as allowed both under ARPA legislation and the ARPA Review Committee.
And that's the 300.
300,000. There's another piece that I'll just tell you. I don't want to confuse things, but that way you can tell me, probably colleagues, if we want to, and those on the screen, if we want to deal with this separately. I think we should probably talk to our Alachua County colleagues, and I think a piece of a motion would be this, and I think they'd be open to it. That we request, we send a letter to the Alachua County Commission, and we request that they modify their continuum of care costs to provide some more direct allocation to Grace Marketplace. Now, they determine, that's their monies that they're determining and where, but at the moment, they've made some priorities which are good ones. This is in the interest of collaborativeness and partnership.
So that's a request for a chair letter a mayor letter to go to them.
And we're asking them to consider modifying their continuum of care funding to allow some more direct funding out of that $1.5 million directly to Grace.
I would leave it to them, how they find more money.
It's exactly what it does. It's essentially that. We can mention the continuum of care. We can talk about the fact that we know that it has meaningful pieces that do address some things through parts of the services provided by Grace, but we're asking to see if maybe they can determine a way to potentially help meet the gap. So I don't know if we want to make that separately. Clearly, the first part, I really need to hear from my colleagues and determine what's best.
Well, and we can split.
I think it's a low-hanging fruit.
I was going to second it for discussion.
Well,
Yep.
well, yeah,
Thank
and
you.
no, you got more there, right?
That's enough for now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm finished. Yes,
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
So we have motion and a second.
Okay, yes, I second it, and I want to add to that, 25,000 for the Cultural Arts Coalition.
I think there's an opportunity to do more than to a little more cohesively. Let's do this, unless you had other things you wanted to add to that particular piece.
No,
good with those two?
I think that's sufficient. There's a couple other things we might be able to cobble together and stay out of our general budget, but that would only take a minute or two. So why don't we just deal with before us?
Let's do these two, and then we'll get
Okay,
another motion
all right,
for some
all
other
right,
pieces.
all right, we'll do that.
Okay. All right, anybody else on those two items? Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so on the 300,000, I'm in agreement. My understanding, yeah, this was an administrative building, which makes a lot of sense in a time when you're a consistently growing organization if we're in a point now where they are scaling back, it makes sense to put that into operations. And I'm in favor of sending something to the county. I will say that we're kind of entering kind of a long history here as it relates to our relationship with the county. I mean, last I checked, when I went to the Alachua County Commission's website, Project Grace is still a thing that's on the Alachua County Commission's website. But there was a time period, I'd say about, was that 2017, John, where that split occurred between us and the county? You know what? Maybe you should just, do you want to go into some of the history of your relationship with the city and the county and when that split occurred?
Sure, to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, John DeCarmine. So when we started in 2014, that came directly from work approved by both commissions in December of 2005. It then took us 9 years to locate a sufficient place that the community was supportive of us opening up a large homeless services facility. So starting in 2014, we had equal funding from both the city and the county. I want to say that started at about $308,000, which turned out to be woefully inadequate to run a place for hundreds of people in crisis 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we had worked with the city and the county. They had shared equal funding until just about 2018, maybe even 2019. And even when the contract started, it was equally split between the city and the county. Forgive me, the last 3 years of the pandemic were either 3 years or 300 years. So I made somewhere in that neighborhood, though, about 2019, 2020, the county had indicated that it intended to pull back on shelter funding, but not homeless funding. They instead were going to create an equivalent amount that would be put towards the greater community's work to end homelessness, but not the Grace Shelter. Instead, that would support a permanent supportive housing plan. And in the past year or two, that transition was complete, such that the city was left paying $1.5 million annually for Grace, and the county was left paying $1.5 million, or budgeting at least annually, for permanent supportive housing. I'm not sure if all of that money has been spent, but it's certainly what they're budgeted.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, John. Yeah, that is. So it was this this period of time where we were trying to figure out. They had a new that the county is very focused on the concept on the housing first model of permanent supportive housing and really doing in-depth services for homeless. And then the city was very passionate about low barrier shelter and just finding a place that if someone needs a place where they can get on their feet until we provide them with services. As we were sort of kind of bickering amongst ourselves as to how money was going to be allocated, that was sort of the way that we split that up. We have been consistently going back and forth as to whether or not, how they spent their permanent supportive housing money, whereas that they have a hotel that they've been renovating that I believe they got a grant in for, and so that's moving forward. So I don't mind sending that over there, but it is sort of a step backward in our relationship with the county. But I mean, at this point, we're sort of reconsidering all the various positions of how we interact with our homeless service provider and then how they're interacting with that as well. So I don't mind sending county, though I am going to have a motion as well for more funding out of the general fund here in a little bit. That would, I think, also keep us less than what we were spending out of the full 1.5 million, but still something that would allow them to keep their keep services at something akin to the level of a cut that's in there. But I guess I would support the motion just to begin that conversation and see if that's something the county is interested in working with us on.
Okay. Yep. So this motion moves $300,000 from the original 750 ARPA funding that Grace has and allows them to allocate that toward support services on an annual basis. It's a one-time move, and that I send a letter on behalf of the commission to the chair of the Alachua County Board of Commissioners to ask them to consider some method of funding direct support to Grace and the low barrier shelter. Is that capture that?
You've captured the essential. And mention the continuum of care.
Yes,
as Commissioner Eastman said, we can't mandate them, but I think they may be open to considering it, knowing what's happening across the street.
Right. I am hopeful that they will start to participate back in that again. I think that would be a really good thing overall. And I look forward to the texts from a couple county commissioners I'm likely to get, so. All right, so no other questions about that. I will then ask all in favor to say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so Commissioner Sacco, was that an aye?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. Thank you, you all for that one. And Commissioner Eastman, you wanted to have more?
Yes, Commissioner Chestnut, I hear what you were saying about the need. I mean, we have a lot of really important organizations here, things like the Wilhelmina Johnson Center, things like the Cultural Arts Center, a number of great, as well as trying to ensure that we are giving, as in my estimation, a cut to Grace as part of our organization that is akin to what we're seeing in other areas. I would recommend taking our fully allocating the PRCA outside agency funding an additional $71,000, so funding that at 100% of what it was last year. Same with the special events additional support, the SEAS grants at an additional $25,000, and then allocating an additional $300,000 to Grace Marketplace out of our general fund, which would then bring them up to $1.3 million if you include the $300,000 there. It would then be an additional, I believe, $300,000. That cut would be next year, so they would essentially be at 1.5 this year, 1.3 next year, and then I guess at 1 million, I guess, the year after.
Don't worry about the forward years. I mean,
Okay.
Just do this year.
I do want to make a point that $300,000 is a one-time amount. So if we are saying that $300,000 is blocking that, is backsetting that is not a long-term solution to this. But Madam Manager, if you want.
I wanted to ask you, if I might, Early Learning Coalition and Freedom Motion Program, they would be included in your, because they're the outliers. They're on the other side of that program summary, but they are.
I'll need them to support the motion.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll need them. in there.
Excuse me, and plus the at-risk youth. That's separate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's not here, it's.
So in total, $453,000 increase, which, from what I could tell, there's about $130,000 that is coming out of Office of Equity and Inclusion. I'll assume another $100,000 coming out of the clerk's office, which means you have about $230,000 that you could split within overtime between the police and fire. And I think that we'd be able to do that in a fairly budget neutral way. But I would, and I defer to the city manager on that.
We would balance that all out. I just want to be clear. The $250,000 that is a set aside there is not 50%, or it's just a set aside that we've put there. If the commission deems it appropriate today to just put a motion in place to include that, that's great, because it would make me comfortable that that's safe, so to speak. And so.
So if I could restate what you're saying, this is a motion to fully fund at the original level, PRCA outside agency funding, fully fund the SEAS grants, fully fund the Early Learning Coalition at previous levels, fully fund Freedom in Motion program at previous levels, add in the at-risk youth seed grant, and add in an additional $300,000 for Grace.
Does that pencil out?
What the mayor just said is appropriate.
Yes.
And I could support that. I could
Okay, so
support that.
you second that
That's
one?
a second.
Okay.
That's a second.
So, any conversation about that up here?
The only thing that I will say is that the $250,000 at-risk youth seed grant is already factored into the numbers we presented today.
Right.
At the $250,000.
Right, so
It's
this is just
already
an
factored
affirmation
in.
of that.
So when you saw the 1.666 million deficit, the 250 had already been factored in, is what I wanted to just clarify.
Sure. Okay. Commissioner Book? Yeah.
Cover that motion again. I'm trying to figure out what's the fiscal impact here, and you go over that one more time as it relates to this slide.
So it's, I'll start on the top left and run through.
Okay.
It's 300 additional for Grace. It's 250, which is revenue neutral. That there's no additional impact there because that's already counted.
I understand.
Okay. An additional 37 for Early Learning Coalition.
I want to make the correction, it actually is 32,500. That 37 should say 32,500.
Okay, so it's 32.5 for Early Learning Coalition, additional. 18.1 or 18,100 for Freedom in Motion, additional. 71,250 additional for PRCA outside agency funding. And 25,172 additional for special events, additional support grants. And I haven't added that.
It's approximately 450,000. Again, that would be split between the overtime currently in for police and fire. That's where I would go, along with netting out whatever other expenditure reductions we have now with the Equity and Inclusion Office and potentially the clerk's office.
So if I'm understanding, so essentially 450,000 and change adds to the net deficit, which one we then attempt to make up in the way that the manager said. Do I have that act correctly? Okay, I understand. So we're at 2 million as a net deficit with this thing that we have to, that we're still working towards.
I'm not running the calculator, but we will come back.
Right, I mean, I'm doing rough math in my head too, but I'm seeing what's on here and addresses these agencies. I will say, and Mr. Mayor, so it's terrific that we can fund organizations that are external to the city, but we do have to start internally, and that does concern me. And it is, I think, prudent to always start by moving from 100% to where we were for many of these organizations to something less and less, because this is actually not going to be the new normal for fiscal year 2024. This is going to continue at least through fiscal year 2025, probably beyond that. And so we've got to recognize to the organizations, which all do incredible work, and we've all been involved in many of these things. This is not a pat on the back, but I remember 20 years ago when we did cleanups, and I did those cleanups with Grace Marketplace before Grace Marketplace existed. And the ability for us to help them at least informally find outside funding sources is going to be absolutely essential. And that's regardless where it's in the community that's been alleged, whether it's faith-based organizations, whether it's funding streams on grants that may come through new legislation. We've got to, and we can't put that on the city manager's staff either. That's for us to kind of figure out through our networks where we find sources. So I understand it. Boy, it's a tough one, because every time you increase the red, we've got to find it somewhere. It's I'm mindful of what you said, Commissioner Chestnut, but all right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, and toward that point, I would add that for all these organizations listed up here who we are moving toward a full funding for this coming year, if it would be helpful to you to have support letters for private fundraising from folks up here, please reach out. I'm more than willing to have conversations with you about that sort of thing. I don't want to leave anybody adrift. I want to enhance what we do as a community. Please don't be shy about those conversations. I'm happy to have those conversations. I'm sure that my colleagues are as well. This gets everybody in a good place for this coming year. But this is not the last time we're going to have these sorts of conversations. Let's keep that in mind. So, okay, Commissioner, I know Commissioner Willits and Commissioner Sacco have their hand up. We'll go with Commissioner Willits first because I can't see who's who. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Manager, am I right that this would be the first time this budget cycle that we've directly directed you on spending? I know we've done some revenue side with fire assessment, but it feels like this would be the first, direction from us to absolutely keep or save something.
That is correct. This will be the first. This is a special meeting versus a workshop. And because it is important for us to start transitioning into preparation for the final millage that will be in July, we needed some direct feedback from the commission. So yes, this is the first time that we would be receiving direction from the commission through motions and decision-making.
Okay, and I understand the need for that. I'm a little hesitant to give direction when we don't know fully how we're going to, and I apologize, I said 3 million left to cover. It looks like 1.6, 1.7 is actual. Well, we still have to, with some potential revenue unforeseen, could have more revenue depending on some state stuff. I don't want to tie your hands as much when we're looking at all of the budget. But I understand that this would help you, particularly during our couple-week recess. It would help you go forward and be able to come back in July knowing a little more about what our priorities really are.
You're correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Manager. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I would chime in on that as well, that these are directions to the city manager in the process of bringing a budget ordinance back to us. This is not the budget ordinance. This is direction in that regard. We will have other opportunities to directly address the numbers. We want to be careful about that when we get to those two readings of the ordinance. But we will have other opportunities to affect this.
Absolutely, and at the point that we receive the final roll numbers and we receive the information from the State Revenue Sharing Estimating Conference, I may be coming back and saying we may have to do more. But I will also do my own internal work to continue to work with the internal agencies to refine the budget and bring the deficit down as close as possible, hopefully to zero.
Right. And I'll remind everyone that we are, with the 24 positions that we are talking about that are currently filled, we're working hard to try to get those folks back in other positions. We're making every effort to get that done. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Manager, I think you mentioned it earlier, either you or Mr. Marvell, but for the PCRA and the SCAS, these are just the recipients. Last year, we will, if this motion passes, the pot remains the same, but it still has a process through which applicants have to go and be approved. It's not necessarily we are giving money to these exact groups.
That is absolutely correct, Commissioner. This is just the pot being enhanced beyond the 50%. It does not make a specific allocation to an organization.
Okay. And I think it would go without saying that staff making those allocations would be more cognizant and scrutinize a little more, knowing that if this passes, just how hard won and how difficult it was to get this funding, it would be a little more, there'd be a little more scrutiny on how we move forward with those allocations.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And I think you said the approximate ballpark addition math would be about 450,000.
My estimate, I actually have 446, but I rounded, so 450,000 is approximate. Yes, ma'am.
That works. And I think Mr. Folston said that his department is looking at a reduction of about 163. That is not included currently.
That is correct. That is correct. His numbers are not factored into our net deficit yet.
But yeah, but we did factor in the auditor's reduction, and
Yes.
we hope to see something out of the clerk's office soon.
You are correct. Auditor's office, our numbers have been factored in, and we're still pending the clerk's office.
I'm trying to balance the scale here, at least for this motion's addition. And you said earlier that the final property and tax numbers would be available at the end of this month, or July 1st?
July 1st.
Okay. And that would give you, that, as the mayor said, a more solid picture of what is possible, and you'd come back to tell us, if this direction can be followed or if more modification is needed.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco. So to give this a little mathematical context, we're talking about $450,000 against a proposed $151 million plus overall budget for 2024. That's 0.003% of the budget that we are considering here, which is a good lesson because that's what we end up talking about in a large measure, spending our time on. Not only the city of Gainesville, but Alachua County and every other municipality ends up having detailed conversations about far less than 1% of the overall budget. Much of what we deal with is fixed. It is not something that we can make big decisions over. It is almost always, I don't want to call it a rounding error, but a whole lot less than most of us think we're getting into this business to move. It is a small percentage, a lot of money, but a small percentage of an overall budget, always, that we spend our time having conversations about. Okay, so any other questions from the commission on this? Okay, so all in favor of the additions that we have discussed: $300,000 additional for Grace Marketplace, affirmation of $250 for the at-risk youth seed grant, an additional 31 plus for Early Learning Coalition, an additional 18,100 for Freedom in Motion, an additional 71,250 for PRCA outside agency funding grants, an additional 25,172 for SEAS grants. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk, that passes unanimously. Do we have anything else we need to cover today?
Just member comment, Mr. Mayor.
I see no lights, so I will thank. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm not sure why Steve Barville wants to have the last word.
I don't. I did not hear the extra 25,000 in that.
Which extra 25? Pardon?
I'm sorry. The Cultural Arts Coalition, is that what you're referring to?
So yes, exactly.
Is it not amongst the 71,000? It's
No,
underneath.
it is not. It is a contracted services. It's a program
So
within
that's in addition
PRCA.
to the 25,172?
Yes. So it is a contracted service to program out of that center.
So we have them listed in three categories then?
So it's 475 then, not 450.
Okay, hang on, we'll.
All right, so these are grants. PRCA also has contract with with agencies that provide direct programming out of centers. The Wilhelmina Johnson Center is one of those places where it's programming, and it is a contract with a third party. It's not a grant program. It is 25,000 of it remains in PRCA's budget. Okay?
All right, okay.
Does that confuse everybody?
Probably, but so what has happened is the Wilhelmina Johnson Center program funding is not included in the 450, and in order to do that, so that they're treated equally, we would need to add another 25,000 to the 450. It would need to be 475.
All right, we'll have another motion on that in a second. Commissioner Book did, because he had his light first.
I was first, but I'm going to second what I think is going to be this motion coming, because I actually thought it was in there.
Okay. Commissioner Chestnut?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I thought the 25,000 for Wilhelmina. The 25,000 for the Wilhelmina Johnson Center Cultural Arts Coalition was in there, but I'd like to move that we direct the manager to include the Cultural Arts Coalition at funding at 25,000 RFP.
Right, so that's the Wilhelmina Johnson Center, $25,000, which then goes out for.
The Cultural Arts Coalition, that's where it's housed. Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was too.
Piece two.
So
And we
good
do have to
catch,
be-
Steve.
Yeah. That's why Steve gets the last word.
That's why, I'm glad he caught it.
We do need to be equitable across the board if we're dealing with multiple nonprofit organizations, so it's the right thing to do.
25,000 additional to anything we've
Correct.
discussed already. Yeah.
That's the motion.
Okay, all right, so we got a motion and a second to that. Let's clear that up and then we'll.
You can clear my light, that's all I was.
Okay, all right, so both those are good. All right, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passes unanimously? Okay, any other member comment?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Talking too much
No,
today,
it's all right.
I will say, we have a very significant agenda tomorrow, both morning, afternoon, and night. And it appears that the manager may have dealt with one of those agenda items today, and perhaps the clerk and the manager, and you all might want to consider removing that agenda item that deals with Ironwood. There, folks may, it probably stifles the discussion, but I think that the majority of people who would come will probably see what's occurred here and perhaps not need to. I don't want to reduce any community input, but that may be something to consider.
So just since since we already published it that way, I want to leave it on there, and we'll just have we'll make a statement that it's under management review, and we can fill in gaps around that. And if anybody has any specific questions on it, they'll be able to be handled then. And yes, it is a packed agenda tomorrow. There's a lot to be worked through. I want to thank everybody who participated today. This is hard. You know, there's nothing easy about this process. Staff has done an unbelievable job working to get us to this point where we're almost balanced. We don't have to be balanced yet. Let's keep that in mind. We're months from where we have to be done, and we're not done. So there's more to be worked on, but staff has done an unbelievably commendable job across the board bringing us these decisions. They've allowed it to be a whole lot easier for us as a commission than it could have been. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the community input. We have more to go. There's more to be heard, but we are in a good place in a very difficult time. So thank you all for your work. Thanks to the 100+ people who sent emails about Grace Marketplace today, and all the folks who have sent emails about the other items that have been considered and continue to be considered through this budget. Community input is a very, very positive thing, and your voices are heard. We may not always get to the point that you want, but I really absolutely appreciate you taking part in this discussion of how your community works. So that's it. I appreciate everybody's effort and input, and we will see you at 10 o'clock in the morning.